We call the meeting back to order at 6:40. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. You're dumping stuff all over the place. I have one item from closed session. The board reviewed in closed session item B4 in the matter of student discipline and approved the readmission of case numbers 2013-14-3 and 2014-15-1 by the following roll call vote. Ayes, Lucky, Colados, Sharp, Reed, and Vandenboss. Noes, none. Abstain, none. May I have approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Board President announcements. The district is currently enrolling students who are new to the district for the 2015-16 school year. Elementary and intermediate students will begin a two-step enrollment process by completing an online application at PVPUSD.net and bringing verification documents down to the enrollment center here at 375 Via Almar, PV Estates. High school students can go directly to their home school for new student enrollment. The first day of school, I said this last time before, we were 3 days out of last year's school, but the first day of school for next year is Monday, August 31st. Regular Board of Education meetings have changed to Wednesdays for the 2015-16 school year, generally the second and fourth Wednesday of each month with a few exceptions. Closed session will begin as usual at 5 o'clock, and open session begins approximately, with the word approximately in parentheses or in quotations, at 6:30. There are two regular board meetings scheduled for the summer, one on Wednesday, July 22nd, and the other one on Wednesday, August 12th. For a complete list of all board meetings for the 2015-16 school year, refer to the district website. With that, may I have approval of the minutes from May 21st?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. June 11th. Oh, May 21st is me. I'm an abstain for May 21st, aren't I? I think I am. Yeah, that was the reason we had to carry it from last time. Okay, so sorry, I abstained. June 11th.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
And I abstain.
And Tony
abstaining
abstains on that one, yeah.
Yes.
All right, good. Okay, Don, report of the superintendent.
All right, thank you. First of all, I'd like to start out tonight by calling on our Deputy Superintendent, Lydia Cano, to introduce our first presenter.
Good evening. Tonight we have a special presentation from Cal Water, and joining us tonight are Justin Scarb and Dana Rasmussen, and I'd like to ask them to come forward, and I'm also going to ask Louie to join us up front as well.
Welcome.
Yeah, sure. It's a period key. There you go.
All right. Let that warm up for a second. Members of the board, thank you so much for having us here tonight. As Lydia said, my name is Justin Scarb. I'm the Government and Community Relations Manager with Cal Water. Dana Rasmussen's here with me. She's one of our newly appointed conservation coordinators that we've appointed inside the company to help our customers with conservation efforts during the drought, which is what we're here to chat about. Few things that I want to chat about with you tonight, and then save a bunch of time for question and answers. First is recent developments, what brought us to where we are today. The second, the plan that Cal Water has put together to deal with the current water shortage situation, the drought across the state. Dana is going to talk about the conservation tools that Cal Water has available to assist all of our customers, including the school districts, individual schools, to achieve better water use efficiency. So, as you probably heard, we're in a drought. On April 1st, the governor issued an executive order that did two things. One, it declared that there's a continuing state of emergency given the water shortage in California. That's a carryover from an executive order that he initially made in early 2014. More importantly, what the executive order did is it mandated that the state achieve a statewide reduction in potable urban water use of 25% by February 2016, potable water being drinking water. On May 5th of this year, the State Water Resource Control Board, which is the regulatory agency at the state level that oversees groundwater, et cetera, issued a set of regulations consistent with the mandate from the governor's executive order. It established certain prohibited uses of water, which I'll get into in a little bit more detail. More importantly, what it did is it followed through on the governor's executive order to achieve that reduction in water use. And what they ended up doing is they divided the state into 9 different tiers of usage. What they did is they looked back at usage, residential usage in July through September of 2014, and then they assigned a reduction target based on those numbers. So you can see all the way at the bottom, 65 gallons per person per day would come in at 8% reduction, and then at the top, tier 9, if you have over 215 gallons per person today, you would have a 36% reduction. On the peninsula, the average residential gallons per person per day usage in, that says June, it should be July, I forgot to change that, I apologize, was 255 gallons per person per day, which unfortunately puts the peninsula into that 36% reduction target compared to usage in 2013. So in response to this, the actions from the governor and the State Water Resource Control Board, Cal Water, filed with the California Public Utilities Commission, which is the direct regulatory agency that we report to, our water shortage contingency plan. It's a plan that we adopt in times of water shortage emergency. If there was an earthquake, et cetera, it's the type of plan that we would adopt. Given the drought, we've implemented this plan. It really contains 2 primary components. It became effective June 1st. The first is a series of prohibited uses of water that mirror those that were adopted by the State Water Resource Control Board. The first is application of water to outdoor landscaping that causes runoff. You'll see this a lot of times when you're driving around. Somebody's running their sprinkler system. Maybe one of the heads is broken and it's flowing onto the driveway or onto the sidewalk down the street. That's a prohibited use of water by the board. The washing cars with a hose without a shutoff nozzle on it, that's a prohibited use of water by the board. The application of water to driveways and sidewalks. If somebody has a habit of growing mold or other stuff on their sidewalk or driveway, they're not allowed to do that anymore. The use of water in a fountain that doesn't have, or other decorative water feature that doesn't have a recirculating device. The recirculating device recycles water in that water feature so that you don't have to continuously add more water to it. The application of water during or within or after 48 hours of measurable rainfall. The board didn't define measurable rainfall. Cal Water is defining that as 1/10 of an inch. The technical definition actually of measurable rainfall is 1/100th of an inch, so we're giving the benefit of the doubt to our customers on that, and that's really a no-brainer. You don't want to see people irrigating their lawns while it's raining or shortly thereafter. Not everybody is included in the prohibited use of water. They didn't really restrict the extent of those regulations. New construction, though, that occurs, new buildings, new homes, et cetera, they have to use either microspray irrigation systems or drip irrigation systems. Those are high-efficiency systems that apply small amounts of water to the root zone of plants, trees, et cetera. Also, there's a system of irrigation restrictions now on the peninsula that limits outdoor irrigation of ornamental landscapes to no more than 3 days per week. Given the number of locations the district has, we're going to work with the district on identifying what the right schedule is that's consistent with that 3 days a week. And Dana and one of our counterparts, Susan, has already been in those conversations. But the rest of the peninsula will be under that 3-day-a-week restriction, no irrigating between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Leaks have to be fixed in a short amount of time. Right now, the stage that we're in, it's a 5-day time period that we're asking folks to fix leaks within that time period. Restaurants aren't exempt. If you go to a restaurant and they serve you drinking water without asking for it, that's a prohibited use of water according to the board now. Hotels are in the same situation. Every hotel in California now should be giving their patrons the opportunity to not have their linens laundered daily. Cities aren't exempt. Ornamental turf on public street medians is not supposed to be irrigated with potable water anymore. There's not that many of those on the peninsula, and in talking to the cities up here, that's not going to be that difficult to deal with. No filling or refilling of ornamental ponds unless it's to sustain existing aquatic life. Somebody can't go out and buy a bunch of goldfish right now and dig a pond in their backyard and fill it up. Well, the board would probably dislike that. As with these types of restrictions, we unfortunately have to have enforcement that goes along with them, otherwise they're not much of restrictions in the first place. We really have adopted a customer-first approach to the restrictions that we've put in place. The first violation, let me backtrack. The first time Cal Water sees somebody violating one of these prohibited uses, it's going to be more of a conversation with that customer. It's not going to be a formal written violation. The first violation, though, if somebody continues to abuse those prohibited uses of water, it'll be a written notice. The second violation would be a $50 surcharge on the customer's bill, then a $100 surcharge, and we certainly hope that we don't ever have to get to excuse me, a fourth violation with any of our customers, which would give us the authority to install flow restricting device on that customer's service connection. Those devices limit the amount of water that flows through the water meter to just that water that is needed for indoor water use. The second component of the water shortage contingency plan that we've put together is a system of water budgets for each one of our customers. We said we can't just tell people that they have to reduce their usage by 36%. Most people don't know what that is. They rarely look at their water bill and know exactly how much water they use. So what we've done is we've established individualized water budgets for each one of our customers by month. What we did is we went back and looked at each customer's use in 2013, reduce that by the service area's reduction requirement on the peninsula. That's a 36% reduction, and then that will constitute their water budget moving forward by month. So if you used 100 units of water in July of 2013, your water budget in July of 2015 will be 64 units of water. Here again, there are penalties that are associated with exceeding those water budgets. On the peninsula, it will be $9.54 for each unit of water over the budget. What that amounts to is twice the per unit charge for the district's highest quantity rate. Those penalty rates will go into effect beginning with the first billing period in July. Even though our overall plan became effective on June 1, we're not assigning surcharges to anybody who had on a billing period that included use prior to June 1st. So it'll be the first billing period really in July. We're also allowing water banking for our customers. So let's say somebody has a water budget of 100 units and they only end up using 50 in 1 month. They can carry those extra 50 units forward into future months, like rollover minutes on a cell phone plan, and those units of water would be deducted from their bank prior to any surcharges being applied to them. We also have established an appeals process. In a very short amount of time, we were required by the board and the governor's executive order to establish this program for all of our customers, and it was simply impossible for us to put together a plan that was going to take into the unique circumstances in each and every one of our customers. So in response to that, we put together a plan that's flexible enough that includes an appeals process that allows customer to appeal their water budget. Let's say somebody wasn't living, they were only living in their house part-time in 2013. That's an appealable decision for their water budget. If they've significantly reduced their water use since 2011, that's an appealable, that's something that they could appeal under. If more water is needed on their water budget for health and safety reasons, that's another reason that somebody could appeal their water budget. Now, Dana is going to chat about our conservation program. So again, Dana is the newly minted conservation coordinator for the area. The bad stuff, those questions should be directed towards me, and all the good stuff should be directed towards Dana when we do get to questions. So.
Thank you. I'm glad we had the discussion earlier. That helps later. So on the rebates that we have available for your area, for the commercial customers, we do have the high efficiency toilet rebates as well as urinals, the high efficiency clothes washers. We also have the smart irrigation controllers, which adjust their sprinkling times according to the changes in the weather. Additionally, continuing with the irrigation theme, we have the rotating nozzle rebates, which will disperse the water a little bit more evenly, and as well as the spray body and integrated pressure regulation with check valve rebates. These are also good for areas that have a high or fluctuating pressure. They regulate the pressure and it's a little bit more consistent. We also have the free sprinkler nozzle program, which is also available to you all. Additionally, we have a turf replacement program in place.
And that's actually all we've got. But the folks from the district wanted to chat about some of the things that we've already begun speaking about.
Yeah, so Louis first attended a meeting several months back, and Chris has also attended a meeting, and so we've been talking about different things that we can do. And so what we're doing is we are, Jana, did you pass out the packet? Oh, okay. So one of the things that we're looking at is the rebate programs that Cal Water does offer. And so what Louis done, and you'll see it at the back of your packet, is we had a landscape contractor come out and give us a quote on Rancho Vista as an example. And so that we could look and see what it would cost if we were to replace the existing sprinkler heads and put in smart irrigation controllers and take advantage of the rebates that are available through Cal Water. So that's this document here. It's at the back. There's two pieces. And so if you jump down to the bottom line, you can see that the cost of this project would be $19,000. We'd get $8,400 in rebates, and so our share, so to speak, would be $10,619. Now, just to explain that this isn't all the sprinklers. So this does not include the fields, but it does include the small landscape areas and other smaller areas. And these sprinklers could produce a savings of up to 30% based on the information that's all here from Finley's. However, that doesn't mean that we've now achieved 30% reduction at that site, because this doesn't cover the entire site. But it would help us toward reaching that reduction at the school site. So this is one of the things that we've looked at, and Louis, please jump in if I'm missing something.
Now, we believe 60% of a site's water use is irrigation. So it makes sense to start utilising the rebate programmes and maybe pay out of pocket, 100% district out of pocket for the fields to achieve the savings versus
I'm
green.
sorry, I thought you were done. Do you know what the percentage of that 60% is being used by the fields?
No.
Any
It's
idea?
hard to quantify.
Our meters aren't set up that way, so we don't have a meter just for the fields. That's what makes it hard.
It's on your domestic service, so it's 1 metre.
Well,
But 67% of that metered use is typically irrigation. So by utilising the rebate programme,
Sure.
start off with,
I don't need the number right now, but there probably is a way to figure out how many sprinkler heads are pumping in through the fields versus the small. I'm just curious to know. It would be silly, it seems, to only be looking at the smaller areas if the fields are taking up the vast majority of the irrigation of that 60%.
well, true, but
And one of the reasons we looked at this is the sprinkler heads that we would have to replace in the fields don't qualify for the rebate program. So at this point, we were just looking
we're just
at
trying to utilise the
how we
rebate
could take
program
advantage of the rebate program.
to start with.
Aren't our play fields exempt anyway? I had a conversation last week with the four mayors, and especially the mayors of the two cities who actually have play fields other than our property. Their indication was they don't have to turn brown, that they can keep their Hess Park and their High Ridge Park green. And so,
Well, let me answer that in two parts. The good news is we haven't told anybody that they have to stop irrigating or that areas have to turn brown. Some areas are going to be more dry than other areas. That goes along with any cutback. But we do not have an exemption for golf courses, parks, et cetera, from water budgets. The one exemption that we do have is what I spoke about, the day of week restrictions that we'll work on. So if you needed to irrigate 5 days a week or 7 days a week, we'll work with you on that. But there's not a built-in exemption from the water budget. So I'll need to follow up with the mayors that you chatted with, because I'm not sure where they got that information from.
well, no. Because I brought up, I said, I guess, again, in this city, that big field you passed out that belongs to us, this city doesn't have any other fields than what belong to us.
Right.
For active recreation.
So one program that we do have, and I don't think that we had a chance to talk with the district yet about this, is we'll allow folks to consolidate all of their usage for all of their connections together and then reallocate out to different properties. So it may be the case, and I had already communicated to the cities that we have that program. So what they may be saying is that they've decided that they're not going to achieve any reductions at their parks, but they're going to plan on achieving those reductions elsewhere. I'm not positive that that's what they meant, but it may be.
Yeah.
So they have the ability to combine everything and bank.
Right, so we'll get that information to you all. Actually, I'll go back to the office when we get done here, and I'll get it sent off to you
Great.
tonight.
Because I was going to ask that question. It didn't make sense that we could have one site that had no savings, another site that had 50%. You pay the surcharge on the one, you can't bank from the other, and so on.
I mean, priority was always going to be given to the playfields because they have to be safe and for the kids to play on. So if we have to prioritise by actually capping areas around the school.
But this might be a conversation we might want to have with the cities, because since the cities use our school sites as their parks, perhaps they should contribute to the cost of watering them.
Okay, let me move on to our next bullet. So the other thing that we're looking at is in rehabbing the district fields, mostly the high school athletic fields. Everyone is rehabbing right now during the summer. Louis is introducing this product, biochar, which adds water and nutrition retention to the soil so that you use less water. And in addition to our own field rehabilitation, any of the outside groups that do their field rehabilitation, Louis already met with them, and they're going to follow his directive in using the same type of product.
It's basically a charcoal, and it retains the water when it waters down. The moisture stays in the charcoal, and it refeeds the seed, so it doesn't dissipate all the way down. And it's supposed to be a 20% savings when you rehab fields. So we're trying to look at several measures at all points when we do rehab fields, because we do want green fields for the kids to play off. There's a way to save water.
We do have some large areas that have plantings that are things like ice plant and ivy. Do you have any sense of whether we water those or not?
Majority of them we don't, and if we do, we're actually capping them and reducing them right now.
I've had ivy in my yard for years, and
Yeah.
I've never watered it. It doesn't seem to stop it from growing.
It doesn't need it. But we are
I've tried to get rid of it, and it doesn't seem to stop it from growing.
Yeah, we are walking around the sites identifying areas that we completely just cap straight off.
Yeah,
And
and
then there
actually,
was-
that Louis is actually speaking to the next bullet, is identifying those areas where it doesn't affect our kids.
And maybe they're
shutting it
green,
off.
and we can get a rebate for turning it into something else?
Well, we're going to
That's-
get to something, yeah, so can you go to the next slide? So the other thing that we've done is Chris, via All Her Energy program, she has every water bill from 2013, so she's actually working with Dana. And we've identified some areas where there's some discrepancies in the budget that they've assigned to us. So Chris is working with Dana, and they're working on correcting those for us, because we don't want to start with a lower budget than we need to. So that's one piece that Chris is taking care of. And then Louis and I are still developing a memo. We're trying to hit everything that we can think of to our sites that'll go out, that's going to talk to them about, for example, no power washing sidewalks anymore, no more car washes. We've already told them for fundraisers, there's no more car washes. To create a student awareness, and all eyes on water leaks or anything else. So we want them to take an active role, because we don't have enough maintenance workers at every site, where we want not only our custodians on the site, but if kids see water leaks somewhere, we want them to bring it to an adult's attention. And what we're going to be telling them is, don't just do a work order, follow that work order up with a phone call, because we're going to make all water leaks a priority. So that's some of the things that we're working on, putting in a memo that we're going to give to the sites. And then Dana's going to talk about one program that Cal Water offers, but one thing that Louis and I have talked about that we thought might be fun to bring awareness to our kids is if we had a district-wide type of project where the school that submitted the best drought-tolerant garden design, that we would go ahead and put that garden in for the site that wins, so that it would involve students, bring their awareness to the fact that we need to conserve water, and that's something that we're going to want to talk to you, the board, about more, because we'll need to designate a dollar amount for that contest award. But just trying to bring awareness from the adults to the students, and doing our best to conserve our water, and hopefully the district being a leader in that effort. And Dana, can you talk a little bit about H2O?
Absolutely. So similar to the district, Cal Water is very geared towards education, whether it's educating our customers or now educating our future customers. Cal Water offers an H2O challenge. The information is available on our website for those of you that are looking for more. It's at calwater.challenge. And this is a project-based challenge eligible to grades 4 through 6. This is a project where the students, along with it's per class, it's not as a group, all of the grade 4. It's each classroom will initiate and develop a 4 to 8 week long project that focuses on the care of water and the importance of water. So all the handbook and reference material is supplied to the instructor. And at the end of the project, they create a digital profile, which is submitted to a panel of education and environmental specialists who will determine who the winner is. I think this year the winner was up in Bakersfield, and the winning classroom actually receives a trip to a nature center at the Channel Islands. It's a 3-day, 2-night event. There's also second and third place prizes as well, and all of the participating students will receive a certificate of completion. So it is something that we have available. It's closed right now. I believe it's coming back open in August, but I have been speaking with Lydia about that. Once it becomes available, I will notify you guys. That way, you guys, if you're interested, you can take advantage of that program.
We also have 3 swimming pools in the district, 2 5 years or younger, and 1 that's much older than that. What do we do?
So there's not any restrictions on the filling of swimming pools right now. There are no restrictions on the filling of swimming pools. That they're not exempt from the water budget. One thing that we'll talk to Lydia about some more is the appeals process that we've created for our customers. I think that things like swimming pools at school locations would probably fall into the category of health and safety type issues, where there should be a certain exemption for those. And then we'll need to figure out when they're filled, when they need to be filled, whether or not they've got a cover on them, how often they're used, et cetera, just to figure out, get some more detail and data of what that budget needs to be to account for that. We'll work with the district on those, though. A couple other things that I wanted to mention in terms of the turf replacement, that type of contest. Metropolitan Water District does have a rebate program that may be eligible to the school district to assist in that type of removal. Cal Water also would love to partner with the school district on something like that. And if teachers want us to come into the classroom, Dana or Susan, to chat about our programs, to chat about water conservation in general, all they need to do is give us a call and we will be there. Obviously, school's out for the year, but even if there are summer school classes that are going on, we'd be more than happy to do that and to help any way that we can in that regard. And the other thing that I wanted to say is, if after all the work that Louie and Lydia go through in terms of evaluating the water use at all of the locations, if the numbers at the end of the day come back to a point where it's going to be, maybe we can get to a 30% reduction every month, but we can't get to that 36% number. We hear all the things that we're doing. We want to see that in an appeal too, to be able to go through those things and to recognize that things are going on, but at a certain point you can't cut back anymore. And we recognize that it's difficult, especially for a school district that's so large and has so many facilities, to be able to control all of those accounts and make changes in the short term. So we'll work with the school district on that too.
Do we have any sense of how many 100 cubic feet we use a year?
No, but I'm sure we could tally up all the monthly billings.
Maybe Chris's program has a, because it'd be interesting to know what our potential liability is if we don't do a good job of it.
We're actually
at $10 a cubic
well,
foot,
we're actually in the appeals process already.
or 100 cubic feet or whatever.
Because Chris found some discrepancies in the old billing from 2013, which it's based on, and that's why we're dealing with Dana right now. So we're trying to get an actual bottom line. That's what we're trying to figure out.
Do you have to, in order to use these smart irrigation controllers, do you initially have to change out the irrigation system, or can you just put the controllers
Just
in?
the controllers. The actual the contractor that you see and actually
This one?
went to the site, identified what smart control system will work with the existing controls. Cal Water have a list of smart control systems that they give you, and then we'd figure that in the price.
And does someone at the site actually maintain this, or is it something that can be done
The
centrally?
beauty is it's self-sufficient. It's self-sufficient. It reads the local microclimate in that
Okay.
over that school, and it adjusts the irrigation system to what the outside weather is. If it's overcast, it adjusts accordingly.
It would be easier for me to make a value in this if I had some base numbers to play around with. And I understand you can't measure exactly, but if you could tell us what the usage in a year at Rancho Vista is and take the 60% thing and do some sort of rough number calculations to know that this may be responsible for X number of 100 cubic feet of water usage a year, and if it's going to save X percent, you get some idea. Are we spending, even with the rebates, $10,000 to save $300? Are we saving $10,000 to save $3,000 or whatever? Just some kind of bottom line idea of a payback would be helpful to make a judgment on this. Otherwise, it'd be hard to say beyond doing a test one someplace and then measuring it for a period of time and then seeing whether the rebates are still available by the time we say, hey, it's a good idea.
We can work on something like that, and I don't know if maybe we can get some assistance from the water company.
I think I've got a report actually on my computer, and I will go back to the office, and I'll try to pull out just the school district numbers from 13, 14, and 15, and I can send that over to you. I understand that there may be some discrepancies, but it'll give you a rough number that you can look at and play
Has
around with.
anyone given any thought to the AYSO usage of our fields for soccer in
Well,
the fall?
AYSO has the Ladera, it's on their own meter.
Yeah, but I mean, that's just one field.
They-
We've got fields at practically every school where they're playing on green grass. At some point, well,
It's football
So somebody is in our school
Lost
children during the
or-
day are using the green grass.
and
the point is, at some point, with our cutbacks, the grass may no longer be green, and the fields may become really a health and safety issue if it gets really bad. So is there something in your appeals process that would allow us to keep the fields as dry as possible, but still as green as possible, so that, kids basically aren't playing on dirt?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's what I was speaking about when all the number crunching gets done. If the numbers come back and say, we can get to a 25, 30% reduction, but if we go to a 36% reduction, we're going to lose this entire landscape area. We want to see that, because we don't want to just look at the drought in the short. The short answer to your question is yes.
Okay.
The longer answer is we don't want to look at this drought in isolation, because if you get to a point where you kill off the turf at a field, for example, it's got to be replaced. Bless you. When you replace that turf, it takes an immense amount of water to get that new turf to take hold. And so you're kind of cutting off your nose to spite your face. You complied with the short-term drought reduction requirements, but you're using more water than you would have if you just reduced it to 30%. We want to recognize that, but we need to take a look at the numbers and continue to work with the district to figure out what those numbers are. And that's the same message that actually I gave to all the golf courses up here. Basically, tell us what the number is before everything dies. And we want to get as close to that number as possible without going over that number.
Do you feel that same way about homeowners, or is it okay for the turf to die at the
No,
homes?
I mean that's the same number. That's really the same thing that we're telling to all our customers. If they get to a point where there's nothing else they can do, we want to know about that. I think when you look at the average residential use on the peninsula, you've got a lot of customers that are using a lot of water.
They didn't get the memo. Is it true that we are the largest consumer of water on the peninsula? That's the folklore,
The school district?
the school district.
I can look at that when I get back to the office and give a yes or no answer to it.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, it's an interesting question. You've got a lot of accounts in different schools. Do you count each school differently, or do you just count the customer of record, which is the school district? It probably depends how you account for it. But
We've got separate bills, but what he's saying is it's a different way to look at it. Do we look at each school separately or as a district as a whole? District as a whole, it could possibly be true. We've got a lot of fields throughout the peninsula. But I think that being the largest water user is one thing, but if you compare that percentage-wise to a standard home, yeah, what percentage, you know, of water they use for their size of household versus the percentage of water we use for the size of our acreage?
I can try to find out an answer. Sorry.
I had a couple questions. One that goes along with what Larry was asking on this bid from Finley's Tree. Do we have other bids from other companies? Because my experience with landscape companies is they vary widely on any given day of what they feel like they can get away with charging you.
No, this was turned around quick.
Is that too mean at them? I feel badly.
This
for
was turned around
criticizing.
last week. Actually, I got it yesterday, just as a
This is the
not
best.
so much a sample as a draft of what
It's
approximately what it would be. They incorporated
one.
the rebate program into it. Not many irrigation companies are sophisticated enough to do it as quick as this and as clean as
Okay.
this. So we can get multiple bids. It's no problem.
Okay,
with
I'm
that.
just curious since you're going to
Yeah,
go
we
back.
typically do 3 bids. on
And my
something
other
like
question
this.
is, I heard through the grapevine that at the PV High School, they implemented an ocean-friendly garden program with an environmental science class, and the kids were looking to expand it, whether they're not in the class anymore or not, to the elementary schools and that kind of thing. Is there work going to be done on that in the fall? Does anyone?
Haven't heard of
No.
any expansion to
Okay,
elementary schools.
so it's just a one-time thing that, I mean, obviously, high school students are more capable of doing that than.
Well, that
other ones
actually
on
was
their
done
own,
in
but-
partnership with Cal Water and the.
Six school districts in the South Bay
Yeah.
participated and got a
Yeah.
garden
Is there a
each.
way to know if that's saving, is there a way to quantify what that does, or is it too small of an area to
I
really get
imagine that
numbers
there
for?
is some quantification of the savings that have been achieved from that. I'll look into it. Yeah, absolutely.
Is there any direction you want from the board at this point, based upon the presentation?
I think the one direction Louis and I would like is whether you want us to pursue more of these rebate-type programs where we would be eligible for Cal Water rebates, but yet there would be an out-of-pocket, so to speak, portion that the district would still be responsible for. And that's why I included on the last page the deferred maintenance budget, which does include the roofing that we're doing this year. It's the very, very last page. You can see that we don't want to deplete that because we know the bulk of that is for roofing, but if we could possibly get direction that says, let's take 100,000, 150,000 toward water conservation projects or something, that would give us a kind of guidelines of, let's see what you can do within these parameters, and then we could bring that back to the board and say, this is what we found, this is what it would cost, and they get your approval to go forward.
And I think the bottom line is we're on the clock. That's it. The clock started last month, and so we're going to spend. We need to spend money, whether we spend it now or we spend it if we don't do anything. We are on the clock.
Are there any parameters, Larry, you'd want to put on that? If we,
I need a case study to understand. I mean, basically, give us a complete picture of.
So if we do a simple case study for Rancho Vista,
That's
and give you
fine.
some numbers, and
And just come back to the next board meeting and give us the, sort of how it looks, and
Yeah.
we can go from,
Okay.
give you some
and that's just
guidance.
going to be, we'll get it as close as we can. And
Well, no, I understand.
yeah,
Well,
It's
maybe
like
we
you're
need some
scoping
help.
out a job.
Yeah.
Until you open the walls, you don't really know what the job's going to cost.
one last thing that I wanted to say, unless there are more questions, is that undoubtedly this is an issue that's facing the entire state, and it's not as though the PV Unified School District is the only school district that's going through this. But we absolutely want to give credit where credit is due for, on the tail end of this, for any of our customers, including school districts that have gone out of their way to find savings and meet water budgets. So anything that we can do going through this or at the tail end of the drought to advertise the great work that the school district has done, individual schools, classrooms, students, be that with elected officials at the local level, state level, federal level, we're happy to help in that regard, and with the press, and get positive PR for the school district, which, you know, at the end of the day helps to counteract that perception, or correct or not, that you are somehow wasting water if you are, or even if you aren't the largest user of water on the peninsula.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Justin. Thank you, Dana.
Okay, thank you to everyone. Next, I'd like to turn over just a few minutes for Assistant Superintendent Dr. John Bowes to go over a few highlights of investments that we've made in human resources.
Sure, thank you. And I'm going to provide a high-level overview of the last 7 years through the human resources lens and how we're reinvesting in those programs. So as a nation, a state, and a district, we all struggled with the challenges of the worst recession that we've encountered since the Great Depression. And over that time, we've struggled with declining enrollment. In fact, we've decreased by just about 400 students overall in that time period. Through that time, we've also lost about 50 certificated positions. And this combination of poor economic situation and declining enrollment really creates a double jeopardy position for school districts, because as enrollment decreases, we lose ADA. And as we lose students, we have smaller class sizes, many times in part necessitating fewer teachers. Also during this time, our K through 3 20-to-1 program adjusted to a 24-to-1 program, meaning 24 students instead of 20 students per teacher, which also resulted in some reductions in force. Luckily, beginning with the passage of Proposition 30 and LCFF funding and an improving economy, we were able to add 12 certificated positions back to our workforce in the 14-15 school year. And that's despite continued declining enrollment, which is a situation we're trying to turn around. But we're trying to create conditions that are better for teachers in the classroom to minimize the existence of combination classes. For the coming school year, we are closely monitoring enrollment, but are adding initially 3 more FTEs, full-time equivalent teaching positions, than existed in the 14-15 school year. Other enhancements we're trying to provide on the certificated side involve providing better career opportunities for our teachers. We've historically had 5 of our elementary PE teachers on temporary contracts, and many of them, looking for permanency, either with us or other districts. And we were able to convert those contracts to probationary contracts for the 15-16 school year, which provides them great security as it's a pathway to permanency in the district. This summer, we are able to provide paid professional development. Right now, happening in room 10, we're having professional development regarding math strategies and cognitively guided instruction, aligned with our new adoption. And we've had over 150 teachers participate in that program. We've also, through the improving economy, been able to provide salary and benefits enhancements over the last 2 years. And this all leads to trying to create better conditions within the district to recruit and retain the sort of quality employees we're looking for. Ultimately, this is a people business, and we're trying to make improvements towards that end. On the classified side, we've also made a number of improvements in the last school year. We've been able to add 3 custodian positions to help keep our schools and buildings in better repair and shape. We've added a groundskeeper position, 2 clerical positions. We've had, in addition to our certificated PE program of teachers, we've had 5 aides, and they've historically been 19.5-hour aides. We've been able to add 2 positions, making a total of 7 aides, and increasing the hours for all 7 positions by over 50% to 27.5 hours. So this really enhances our physical education program at the elementary level. We've been able to provide greater clerical support to Palos Verdes High School and made improvements to intermediate school library aide positions. So combined, we're really monitoring closely how we can make enhancements and improvements to, create, good working conditions here at the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District. Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you for the update, John.
You're welcome.
And Moss, in the interest of time, I'd like to just shave mine to one comment, and that is I'd like to thank our teachers for so fully participating in the professional development that's taken place this summer. 150 teachers participating in optional professional development to enhance our mathematics program at the elementary level is a very high percentage, and the enthusiasm that they're bringing to the table, coupled with the adoption of the new curriculum and putting in their hands the new textbooks and bringing in top-level presenters and people facilitating that work is to be commended. And that'll end my comments for the night.
Thank you. With the board's acceptance, I'd like to move up in front of Jay, the special report on L1, so that we have people that have flown in to make a presentation, and rather than have them sit and listen to us, I'd rather have us sit and listen to them.
Okay.
If that's all right.
It's fine.
All right, so I'll throw it back to you.
Okay, thank you. They'll appreciate that. So at this time, I'd like to bring forward our friends from Capital Advisors to talk to us about budget updates and some legislative action that's taken place in Sacramento. We have Kevin Gordon, Jack O'Connell, and Jerry Shelton. Thank you. Right here would be great, gentlemen.
A man who needs no introduction.
There we go. Oh,
I was referring to Jack.
board president, yeah, friend of Jack.
Legend in his own.
It's a pleasure to be before you, Mr. President, members of the board, Superintendent Austin, to give you an update on, and again, we do this, as you know, a couple of times a year, and we've been having some conversations with the superintendent about timeliness, and this is certainly timely given the fact that the governor just signed the budget yesterday, so we're able to kind of give you a report of what's going on. We will be doing budget workshops in, 25 cities over the next week and a half, where a lot of people figure out what's going on with this budget, but we always like the opportunity to come here specifically and tell you both what's in the budget and then specifically talk about some of the issues that we've been in dialogue with district staff about along the way, issues that are going to impact this district in particular, and so we'll give you a little update on that. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the macro level issues, the 2 biggest pieces, one-time money that's huge, as well as the big ongoing infusion of money, and how that balances, particularly for this district, in terms of where's the advantages for us here in Palos Verdes. And then Jack's going to talk a little bit about sort of what the politics were of the budget kind of coming together. And then Jerry's going to talk specifically about a couple of key issues that affect Palos Verdes in particular. It's our interaction with SCROC and what's going on with CT or Rock Rope in particular. Actually, I think I'll flip this a little bit, because Jack, I think I'm going to have you open with just kind of the political lay of the land and how this budget came together, and then I'll talk a little bit about some of those macro level issues.
Okay, happy to.
And then we'll do questions.
We have a button that we hit. Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board, and superintendent, many friends here. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for the invitation. And I'll pick up the budget process just for this month of June. I'm not going to go back to January and the budget governor submits. But when I was in the legislature, and I was there 20 years, there was the big five that met. And that's primarily because it was the 2/3 votes requirement. And that's one reason why the O'Connell family never had a summer vacation. You were always on call, always trying to pass the budget, oftentimes even into August or September. Today, it's a simple majority vote budget. So it's no longer a big five that gets together and crafts the final document. It's a big three. The governor, the head of the state senate, and the head of the state assembly. In fact, Kevin and I, coincidentally, were in the governor's office on Monday, June 8th. We were walking in about 10:30 or 11, and we had a meeting there. And the big three were just walking out, and they told us that that was actually their first meeting. And the budget has to pass by June 15th with that majority vote, or if somebody doesn't get paid, I can't remember who, but I know if I were there, Mrs. O'Connell wouldn't like that if that didn't happen. So you knew the budget was going to pass on June 15th, notwithstanding the fact that the big three only had one meeting that week. So the budget did pass on the 15th, but the difference that we've seen is it was a budget that reflected the legislative analyst's office, independent, objective, nonpartisan, pretty accurate numbers historically. And the legislature used the higher revenue limit of the LAO, about I'm going to round off, $118 billion. The governor and the governor's Department of Finance has said, we're going to use our numbers, the same numbers they use reflective of the May revise, $115 billion, about $3 billion less. And so the legislature said, well, we're going to use the higher numbers. And that was the budget that passed on the 15th. Where did that additional $3 billion go? More for LCFF that I know we want to talk about, more for the one-time money that you're going to be recipients of, quite a bit more for early childhood education, that was a priority for the legislature, and considerably more for our friends in higher education, for UC and CSU, some of the non-Prop 98 side of the budget. Then the day after the budget passed on the 15th, so that constitutional obligation was met, the governor basically told the legislature we're either going to see extensive blue pencil, because we're only going to spend $115 billion, or we'll have what they're now calling the budget junior bill get ready to pass. So the legislature said, let's meet again, we'll do this budget junior, and the net result was a second budget bill, budget junior, actually passed that the governor will sign, that the governor signed yesterday to take effect. So the amount of money being spent is $115 billion, plus it's just like 60 million more, I think 62. It was, wasn't it, Jerry? 62 million, which is basically just sweeping up some more money from existing state agencies. So clearly the governor won and prevailed on the amount of money that would be allocated this year.
Right. So think about it. They wanted $3 billion more in spending, and they got $62 million more in a $115 billion budget. Essentially, the governor won big time. And when Jack made reference to Budget Junior, I mean, it was like, okay, you don't want to get in a negotiation with Jerry Brown because you're destined to lose, which is that, you know, they want to spend this higher amount, the governor wants to spend a lower amount. And at the end of the day, you know, they had this huge wish list, and he compromises with them, and they get $62 million. And that's the totality of the difference in the budget. So what he basically said is, you can either work with me on an alternative plan, and we'll try to reconfigure it so we're meeting some of your goals, or I'm just going to take a meat axe to this and carve it up the way I want it, if you're just going to put this budget on my desk and let me do whatever I need to. So they decided negotiating with him was the better way to go. And so they created this budget. The interesting part is the sequence in the legislative process. So they actually passed their budget, we know, the bigger budget. So then they come along and pass a second budget. So most of the working parts of the main budget bill that was passed to him, they actually won. They just spent a little too much money. So what Budget Junior does is it actually supersedes the first document by spending less. So one of the jokes going around the Capitol building was, we better make sure that the right file gets in front of the governor in the right order. Because if he accidentally signed in the wrong order the bills, it wouldn't have that chaptering out effect or that superseding effect. So he had to sign the main bill that was passed. He had 12 days to do it first, and then he signs what we call Budget Junior, and then it has the effect of superseding some of those provisions, and you get exactly what they want. And I know you've watched this process for a while about when they put those files on the desk. So the two major chunks of money that we're seeing, and it really is important here in this district because, you know, compared to other neighboring districts and districts that have different demographics, there are some very significant windfalls in terms of LCFF. The governor was on schedule to put only $2 billion in this year. In January, he said, I'm not going to do $2 billion, I'm going to do $4 billion. That's for the closing of the gap between where you are today and getting to your target under LCFF. But you guys don't have as much benefit as some LEAs do in terms of LCFF. So the more money he pumps into LCFF, it's better for this district if we can get him to pump money into districts and into this district in other ways. And so a big compensator has been this unprecedented amount of one-time money that comes to the district. But the one issue that you have to be concerned about, and we've talked about at the podium before, and we'll do it again and again, is to make sure that we're cautioning our friends in labor and the community and everybody who thinks there's this just crazy amount of money out there that everybody has, when the reality is there's just a huge proportion of one-time money, and that we believe that we're kind of close to the top of the roller coaster in a tax structure in California that goes up and down, and if we're at the top of the roller coaster, it means we're going to be going down at some point in the not too distant future. We're already well overdue in terms of some kind of a modest recession. And the problem would be that if you were tempted to spend that on an ongoing basis, you'd be in trouble. And what we're hearing from a lot of folks in different districts is that some of the opening sort of arguments of some of our friends in labor is that, look, at the reason why we'd like you to spend some of this one-time money on ongoing purposes is because we keep getting one-time money. Well, if you have a very short-term memory, it seems like you keep getting one-time money. But it wasn't so long ago we were cutting budgets. And we have this economic growth, and we are supposed to get paid back for what we lost. The payback on the certificated and classified side is that you have restored some positions, just like John was mentioning a few minutes ago. Is you guys have built some positions back in. You are rebuilding some of those kinds of things. But the point is that we will never get repaid everything that we lost, the way Prop 98 works. Is the way Prop 98 works, they get you back to where you otherwise would have been, but there's money in the intervening years of cuts you lose forever, and CSBA's quantified that number at $59 billion that we never get back again. If we were getting paid back every dime of what we lost, it'd be a different conversation. But we just have to be careful. So the headlines are we're just awash in money, but this district in particular is not as well off as other districts. It's the constant fight we always have in terms of public perception about a district in an affluent community.
Can I use the example that you
Yeah,
sometimes use?
sure.
Kevin uses the example that if you were working for a job and say $50,000 a year in 06, 07, which is when the economy started to tank, and then your employer came and said, we're not going to be able to pay you $50,000 a year, we're only going to be able to pay you $40,000. So the next year you made 40, the year after that you made 40, the year after that you made 40, the year after that you made 40. But then the economy picks up again. So they say, good news, we're going to bring you back to the 50. But you've lost that $10,000 forever. And that's exactly what's happened to the school community. And then the one other word I want to reference, your assistant superintendent talked and referenced Prop 30. We begin to lose some of that Prop 30 money the end of next year. Prop 30, when it passed, continued a quarter-cent sales tax, which is scheduled to sunset, to expire, to go away, the end of the next fiscal year, December 16. We lose that. That's about $1.5 billion to the state. And then we lose the higher income tax brackets at the end of 18, and that's even more money. That's about $6.5 billion. So potentially, the state could lose, $8 to $9 billion in lost Prop 30 revenue that Governor Brown said he's not for extending. Now, he has opened the door a little bit and said perhaps tax reform, but not for a simple continuation of Prop 30.
I wanted to make a couple of comments just to give context to what Jack and Kevin have said. First of all, Jack's exactly correct that the budget the governor signed is about $3 billion less than the budget that was initially approved by the legislature. But we also have to consider that that budget that he signed is about $9.7 billion higher than where anybody thought the budget would be for this coming year last June. So we've kind of stumbled on a huge unexpected spike in revenue to the state in 2014-15. Now that comes to us in the form of the one-time money that Kevin's talking about. Out of that 9.7, between 6 and 7 billion of that is one-time money, not ongoing money to use for ongoing programs or ongoing purposes. And the reason for that huge spike is kind of twofold. One is a little bit of what Kevin was talking about, and that is that this governor has chronically lowballed revenue estimates in presenting his budget in January and in May. And that's why we've seen this friction between the legislature and the governor every year over the legislature wanting to go with a higher number, the governor going with a lower number. You know, our feeling is the governor has done that purposefully in order to hold back the legislature from spending that additional funds like they have in the past. The governor's much more fiscally conservative than the legislature is. So the governor's done that, and that accounts for part of that spike in revenue in one-time funds that we've seen in 2014-15. But the majority of that spike in revenue is not something that's going to recur because of the governor lowballing his estimates. The majority of that spike tracks back to the economic recovery. And in particular, what's happened in the stock market over the last year and a half or 2 years. We've gotten to the point where people are a little bit afraid that the bull market is going to continue, and we started seeing people at the end of 2014 and now in the first half of 2015 to taking profits out of the stock market. When they take profits on those investments, they realize capital gains income. When they realize that income, it's taxable. And that's the volatile, in fact, it's the most volatile piece of tax revenue in the state's tax revenue portfolio. And we've gotten a huge spike in that kind of revenue that hit us in 2014-15, about $5 billion that was completely unexpected as of last June, all of a sudden materialized. And that's what's fueling this one-time money that you'll see in large amounts.
And part of that going to the rainy day fund of Proposition 2.
Right. An additional, I think, $1.87 billion, which brings the total in the rainy day fund to somewhere around $3.5 billion or something like that. That's just in the 2-year period since that proposition was approved by the state.
Right.
But that rainy day fund's not going to help you with your previous issue.
Right. The water, our water friends. Good point, Jack. Yeah, really.
Though we do think that when the governor campaigned on the rainy day fund, he did make use of that, of people thinking it somehow had to do with the drought. So.
Yeah, right, yeah. That's how we got his success. The one thing, Jerry, you and I talked about yesterday, and I wanted to mention, your points reminded me of this. So the governor lowballing revenue, the reality is on that dollar figure that the legislative analyst, the Anderson School of Economics, all these different folks have prognosticated about, we think that money is actually going to materialize. Even though the governor's not letting them spend it, it's not in the budget. What'll happen is, which is exactly what happened last year, it gives them a head start on next year. That there's that $2 billion that materializes, and if for any reason the economy, isn't quite as robust it might otherwise be, he's at least got a $2 billion cushion. And then to the extent that he's pumping so much one-time money into different kinds of things, if we were ultimately to have some unanticipated downward trend in the economy, he's got an incredible amount of cushion before he can ever tell anybody he's actually cutting anything. So it's actually a very smart way to go, and there's lessons to be learned for all of us in the way we do public budgeting around what the governor's approach has been, just to be careful and use the one-time money for one-type purposes. So in terms of actual numbers for us, the one-time money will manifest itself in about a $530 amount of money per pupil. And you have that, and what's interesting about that is it was higher, you might remember, just when we did the May revision, it was roughly $601 per pupil. And the reason why that's smaller is because what the legislature did is they actually trimmed back the amount of money they were going to give out to us as school agencies in the one-time money in order to accommodate a $500 million infusion of money for certificated training. And that professional development around training is probably the single biggest change since May revise. And when we were approached about it a couple of weeks, 2-3 weeks ago, there was this idea hatched about wanting to go in this direction. We started thinking about it, and we talked to the superintendent. We've talked to other people about this. Would you rather have $3.5 billion in totally discretionary money or $3.8 billion of money, of which some of it you need to spend on professional development? And the conclusion we made is that we're going to spend money on professional development. If we're going to spend money on professional development, might as well get the extra money. You net out with a bigger dollar figure, and it's actually better for us overall to get that. So we were advocating that, yeah, we're in favor of that. It has a little bit of strings attached, but even that money is a little bit flexible. It'll come to us. Well, I think, Jerry, your number is about 1,700?
We actually updated those estimates today. Apologize for being a little bit flaky on the number here, but the Department of Finance and Department of Education are still kind of putting their heads together to figure out how they're going to count the number of certificated staff. This money goes out on a per certificated staff basis, but our estimates are probably somewhere between $1,250 and $1,500 per certificated staffer.
Great. And so, but when you get that, it's for professional development, but they're not getting, they have suggestions about what that means. Like, for example, any certificated staff that, were determined to be in need of improvement. But it's like they've been doing lately, the governor's been doing, they do a lot of suggesting at the end of it, they say, or whatever you think is appropriate. But it is going to be for professional development.
Right. For example, it could be used for BITSA, for induction services, for newer teachers, and so on.
Right. The $530 that you're getting that's totally discretionary has no rules, including no spending timeline rules. Like some of the previous allocations of one-time money has said, you've got to have it encumbered within a certain period of time. You have to have an idea of how you want to spend that money. That does not apply to the $530 per kid, so you're going to have a lot of flexibility with that money. And then there's the dollar amounts that you get that are ongoing, and that's in the increase in LCFF funding, which again, just because of your own demographics, you're not going to be as big a winner as some districts, but it does go to sort of gap closure, and it's significantly more money than undoubtedly you guys might have otherwise expected. And it is ongoing money, and it's different in every district. So the deputy superintendent, I imagine, will be going through those calculations. Now that the budget has been passed, we're going to be doing our workshops. School Services does their workshops as well. And I know that you guys will be getting information that will help you make those determinations about what kind of impact it'll be on the district from that standpoint. So those are sort of those macro level issues. Obviously, there are collective bargaining impacts to all of this sort of stuff. And we wanted to kind of address that. The other little thing that I wanted to mention was a little update on what's going on with the budget reserve cap issue. There was a lot of noise made in the legislature about this. I was actually fairly confident it was going to get addressed. And then for a lot of reasons that were mostly political, pressure on the governor and a lot of different things that happened in the legislative process, really an unwillingness of Democrats in the legislature to really change this. It was a deal made with CTA that we did not get budget trader bill language to fix it or modify it, but we're not done yet. There's still conversations going on, and one of the most significant issues that we've made a point about, and in fact the chairman of the Assembly Ed Committee ended up calling, I think, Jerry to say, I need to get my head wrapped around this issue of the increased cost for borrowing. That the impact on credit rating and the cost of borrowing is a significant one. And I think the single best argument we have, because it's not easily dismissed by saying, well, it doesn't get triggered very often. It's just this existence of the cap being out there has an effect. And so, and hopefully, policymakers are looking at that and it's having an effect, because now we're having legislators who up to now have been really unwilling to consider any kind of changes. We're having conversations. And then today was, I believe, the first day of a statewide radio buy that CSBA has launched, which is very bold. and there's a commercial now on the air, and it's intended to generate, controversy, interest, and maybe editorials by newspapers. You do a small buy, and then you listen to this commercial, which is a little kid talking to their parent about money the parent's going to give the kid. And the kid said they think they're going to put it in savings, and the parent says, well, I'm not going to give it to you then. If you're going to, I'm going to give it to you to spend. And then the tagline and the announcer talks about, do we really want to encourage people not to save? That's exactly what we're doing in school districts across this state. And it talks about the policy. Very simple messaging, try to put pressure on what will be the balance of this legislative year as the legislature comes back post-budget to start working on policy. So we'll see what happens. We do believe pretty strongly, and I know we have a difference of opinion with our friends at School Services about this, we do believe pretty strongly that this is not going to get triggered anytime soon, and there's a lot of reasons why we feel the way we feel, and we've typically been sort of more right about those issues than wrong. And it has to do with the thing called Test 1. And I can get into it, but it's just not likely to occur next year, and it has to do with the fact that we've had such a big year-over-year increase in money this year. You actually have to have another year-over-year increase in money that surpasses the delta of this year. That's not likely. And you have to have that. I mean, it's possible, but it's not likely.
So in other words, that spike in revenue that I mentioned, which creates a spike in the Prop 98 guarantee, will end up basically protecting us from the reserve cap being triggered for a few years out from here.
Right.
Even if it were to be enacted, the county superintendent has the authority to exempt you 2 out of 3 years. But it's only, as they said, when you're on Test 1, and we've been on Test 1 since 1988, 4 times. But that said, it's bad policy.
We should mention just that Test 1 is one of the arcane aspects of
Prop
the
98.
Prop 98 guarantee.
Right.
So
There's like 3 people actually understand it.
Right.
Could you address CTE a little bit?
Yeah, and that's what I want to get into next, and Jerry's going to talk about, but I want to just preface it by mentioning that I know there's been some discussion about, every group and different groups of people have their tactics in terms of how they lobby issues. And you guys know that what we do in this district is a combination of, honestly, a more hands-on approach to advocacy than most other districts. I mean, in the years that all of us have been in Sacramento, the number of individual districts that actually take the time to come to Sacramento and be heard and meet with leadership and make the rounds is dramatically smaller than you would ever guess. I mean, we're talking about, I can think of maybe a dozen or 2 dozen districts out of 1,000 that bother to come to Sacramento and do some advocacy and try to influence that policy. Then the other issue is that this group of folks sitting at this table, including some of our other partners, are really engaged in one-on-one. We always talk about there are groups that are good at reporting the news. There are other groups that make the news. Do you want to be rolling up your sleeves and writing the language, or do you want to just be telling people what's in the language? And we tend to practice a very hands-on approach to advocacy. And so there are folks who the extent of their lobbying is that they'll put a logo on a letter with a lot of other people's logos, and that's the lobbying that happens. Somebody else writes it, and they just join coalitions. We have a very hands-on approach to doing the advocacy, and particularly relates to trying to look at where policy may be headed and influence it in a way that we think is ultimately going to have good outcomes for this district. You guys are uniquely concerned about what's going on with the CTEROP issue, and we've been really super sensitive to that issue, and Jerry has been extremely influential in that process. He won't tell you as much as I'll tell you about this, but I know that a lot of credit went to some of the work that Jerry did just in this past week from the ROP Association, because of some of the nuances of what we really tried to craft here, and I think we got a solution that's going to work best for both ROP and sort of the individuality of districts, but also to protect some of the investments that we're making through the JPAs. So with that, Jerry.
Jerry spoke in San Diego to the ROP Association Monday, and Jerry doesn't know we know this. After he spoke to the Association of ROP, standing ovation. So thank you, Jerry, for that.
I must.
And it wasn't just his family.
I must have spoken very well, I guess. So we actually started working on what we've just kind of come to refer to as the CTE issue, that's the fallout from implementation of LCFF, probably about 2 weeks after passage of the LCFF, because, you know, we were very certain that there were going to be extreme impacts on career technical education, and in particular on impacts on ROCP. And in fact, that's come to fruition. We know that that even programs as well-established and as high a quality as SCROC are ending up, you know, facing some issues in terms of support and, you know, ongoing program and things like that. We also know we've lost probably by now about 20 regional occupational programs around the state. They just kind of aren't answering the phone anymore, and you know, and that's a problem. So we saw that coming, started working immediately. You know, over that first year, there were attempts at you know, thinking about reestablishing the direct funding, the categorical funding. It was clear that was going to be a dead end. So, so we developed a proposal to go forward, started talking to legislators and to the governor's office and Department of Finance. And I think that was about 19, 20 months ago, excuse me, that we wrote a concept paper that basically put forth the concept of an incentive grant that provided funding, that required a local effort, local match as a buy-in to career technical education. And basically a lot of what was in that initial concept paper, you know, eventually became the proposal that the governor put forward in January. So, so what has been approved is basically the governor's proposal that he put forward in the May revision. That included a couple of changes, a couple of kind of tweaks that we had a little bit of a hand in. For example, back in January, the first draft of the budget trailer bill language that described this program said that the entities that were eligible for these incentive grant monies were school districts, county offices, and charter schools, period. Right? It did not include ROCPs operated by a JPA. So SCROC and the other 30 or so JPA-operated ROCPs in the state, you know, would have not been eligible to apply for that. You, for example, could have applied as an individual district, and you still retain that right the way this is signed. But now a JPA-operated ROCP can apply as well, as long as the school districts that are participating in that grant proposal basically sign a letter saying that they do want to participate in this grant proposal. So there was that condition placed on JPAs. The governor's, so we got that change made by the Department of Finance and the governor's office early in January, so that the final draft, beginning draft of the language that came out included JPAs as well. We also had a lot of discussions about the local match and how that would work. When the governor came out with his May revision, he made a few changes in the proposal. First of all, and this was a nice part of the change, he upped the ante from $750 million in one-time money in equal installments across a 3-year period, starting in 2015-16, to $900 million across that same 3-year period, still one-time money, and that's something I'll come back to in a minute. The $900 million doesn't go out in equal installments, however. It goes out $400 million in the first year, $300 million in the second year, and $200 million in the third year. He also had a matching requirement in the initial proposal, dollar for dollar local match, in order to receive those state funds. In the May revision, that was changed. The matching requirement is also kind of forward funded, if you will. A dollar for dollar in the first year, that's to access the $400 million. $1.50 of local money to access $1 of state money in the second year. and $2 of local match in the third year to access $1. And if you think about it, with the reduction from 400 to 300 to 200, basically what that means is you would be able to access that reducing pot with the same level of effort, the same dollar effort across that time. Of course, if you ramped up the effort, you could propose to get even more funds in the second and third year. There were also some things that the administration took from conversations that we had with them. We were very concerned about, even with the matching requirement, that funds just going out and saying this is available for career technical education. Because one person's definition of what qualifies as CTE is not the same as another person's definition. In fact, we know that about 50% of the districts in the state have absolutely no history of offering any real effective career technical education to its students. So what about those 50%, like your district, that have and that have bought into high quality career technical education? So what we presented to the Department of Finance, and we worked primarily with the California Association of ROCPs to do this, was basically a definition of high quality career technical education. We took a lot of the elements out of the CTE standards developed by the Department of Education, had conversations with various CTE programs, including ROCPs, including SCROC as well, about this, and came up with a pretty strong definition of things that you would clearly recognize. That a high-quality CTE program would include sequences of courses leading to certification for the students, that the teachers would be highly qualified with CTE, full CTE credentials, and so on and so on, that they would partner with business and industry, partner across different segments in the education community, school districts, as well as community colleges, and so on. So that was a pretty clear definition, but the reason for doing that, and I should say that the Department of Finance and the governor adopted much of that. About 2/3 of those elements actually show up in the statutory language. That is, in order to be eligible, you have to meet this definition of high quality CTE. So in other words, somebody that's never done any real CTE before can't come in, acquire these funds, and offer a course in resume writing and expect that to qualify as a career technical education program. The reason why we were involved in that is because working with districts and other people that have run and had their students participate in these kinds of programs, we felt it was important to give them a leg up in terms of being able to access these funds. And that's particularly important because one of the elements that the governor insisted on in this program is that these grants be awarded on a competitive basis. Now, this was a point of contention between the governor and the legislature. The legislature, when they adopted their initial budget that Jack talked about, actually changed this program to have the funds allocated on a per ADA basis with no match. All right. Now, that took away the local effort, which the governor didn't appreciate, but it also meant that simply everybody got money, meaning even those programs that had offered no CTE in the past, had no history and maybe no intent to offer high-quality CTE, would receive the funds as well. The governor actually got his way in large part because in the negotiating sessions, the governor's staff said to senior legislative staff, if this is not a competitive grant, then the governor will simply veto the full item. In other words, the $900 million would be gone. And the governor would probably have roped that money into LCFF implementation or something like that. So the legislature capitulated. The governor got his way in terms of the competitive grant. The legislature did add some additional elements in this negotiation process that they insisted on. One is that the money that's available, the $400 million, for example, in the first year, can be separated basically into 3 pots. The first pot is what's available, and this is 4% of the total. It's available to any applicant with less than 140 ADA. The second pot, 8% of the money, is available to any applicant with ADA between 141 and 550 ADA. And the third pot, 88% of the money, is for everyone else with higher ADA. Now, this is a little bit confusing to us, because we know there are districts in the state, in fact, that have less than 140 ADA. We also know there are many districts with between 140 and 550, but it certainly doesn't account for 12% of the kids in the state. It may account for 12% of the districts between those two categories. But the other thing is that we also know from working with a lot of county offices of education and working with the ROCPs as well, that small school districts generally don't go it on their own. They combine with others through their county offices of education or through a JPA. So I'm not sure how many applicants for these funds will actually end up with less than 140 ADA, because the way that the statute suggests you count number of applicants or the ADA is by summing the total ADA across all of the partners coming in under that proposal. So if a small school district combines with a number of other small school districts through a county office of education, their ADA is the total in all those districts. So I'm not sure whether those first two buckets are going to have a lot of applicants. The main set of applicants will obviously be for the greater than 550, and that would include you, would include SCROC. For example, just to continue that thought, if SCROC then puts in a proposal for all of its member districts, right, then the ADA under that proposal would be the sum of the ADA across all those districts. And when I say ADA, I actually should have clarified that this is grade 7 through 12 ADA is what we're looking at. So this is, that's one other good thing. It's basically allowing the extension of career technical education down into the middle grades, where ROCP funding was specific to high school grades. The other thing that the legislature added in is something that's a little bit confusing to some people. I have had a conversation with some of the folks at the Department of Education already, and they're trying to figure out what it really means. It says that the Department of Education, in reviewing these proposals, should give positive consideration to a number of categories. Those categories include areas where no CTE program has been provided, areas or applicants that would serve large numbers of unduplicated students, the students in the subgroups defined under LCFF, applicants that would serve high numbers of students from areas with high rates of dropout, applicants that would serve in geographic areas with high unemployment rates. So there's a lot of talk about what positive consideration means. In a conversation with one of the staff to the President Pro Tem of the Senate that works on education, she said their intent was that there might be something like bonus points for that particular proposal. So this is not a priority. It's not a carve-out of money for those types of applications, but it's some sort of extra consideration for those things. There are also other things that are listed here, under that positive consideration, such as applicants that are going to provide infrastructure and equipment. So that would favor, I would think, existing programs that already have kind of put those investments in place, for example, like SCROC. And I think the last thing to say about this is that some people saw the victory of the governor in terms of the competitive grant as being a little bit of a loss relative to the per ADA application. I don't necessarily see it that way. For one thing, we know that folks that haven't run programs in the past probably don't have funds budgeted in their budget for career technical education. If they haven't spent in the past, why are they going to start spending now? And because the governor prevailed, there is a local matching requirement. So somebody out there that hasn't run programs before would have to make the decision, we're going to then change our budget, put money towards this in order to qualify for the state funds. The other thing is that, that the way the requirements of this grant are set up, it's clear to me that high-quality programs should prevail in terms of securing funding in under this grant. And to me, that means programs with proven track records that are high quality. And, I believe that what you've done, under the auspices of SCROC, certainly qualify for that. So we're looking forward to continuing to see how the department interprets this and further interactions between the legislative staff and the department. We're sort of already involved in those conversations. And I know that we're going to come back to you and to other folks that we work with that are interested in CTE with more information about how you might put yourself in a position to be more successful in terms of applying for these funds.
One of the things at the very beginning of this process, the January proposal and again in May, that we were concerned about was we could sense a definite bias against existing programs. We thought, well, if we've been honoring this maintenance of effort requirement and making these, retaining a commitment toward these programs at a time when we were doing budget cuts, and then you got this MOE requirement, the idea that it would have a bias against existing programs just was unacceptable. And then the idea of a competitive grant made it sound like there's no certainty we get any of this money. So to address both of those issues, the dollar amount went up significantly, so now we know that there are adequate dollars to probably fund everybody that exists. And the person that Jerry was referring to on the Senate side, who really took the lead on the language, we talked to her about our concerns about this, is we want to make sure existing programs that we want to put money into are going to have a pretty decent shot at having it. And her sense was that the entire staff, including the governor's staff, believed that the way this was going to get crafted now, it would actually have a very strong bias to existing programs. And the reason why they wanted to sort of give those brownie points to some of those programs that are in underserved areas and high poverty and dropout was so they'd have a chance to get some of the money. And when we sort of heard that, we relaxed a lot more. We'll wait to see what happens. But the other thing that is really crucial is that we sensed a bias by the CDE staff in Sacramento toward new programs at the expense of existing programs. Well, the fact that we got language in there that basically says it's the state board, the governor's appointees, not the staff at CDE, that will actually grant these and create the criteria by which these things will be measured is a really important addition to the language that we got. So we probably talked too long about these issues, but you've got a really good drill down about sort of the expertise of what we brought to the table on this, and I think a lot of the concerns of the district were definitely very well represented. And so I want to stop and take questions. Jack's going to talk a little bit about bond measure as it relates to some of the concerns you guys are going to have, but I wanted to see if there's any more questions on this first.
I do have one question, and it's just, do we have a sense of how much money is spent annually in the state on quality CTE programs?
Well, if we go back into the categorical days and say pre-budget flexibility, so 2007-8, for example, I believe that the appropriation for regional occupational centers and programs was a little bit short of $400 million.
$350
so it's about
million.
I think it
With
peaked,
a line item of $350 million, exactly.
I think if you go a few years before that, I think it peaked out at about 370, but
Now, does that
then
include
came
Perkins?
down. That's general fund,
Everything?
state general fund only. And
So Perkins would be additional.
the federal funds are in addition to that. The California Partnership Academies, which still exist as a standalone categorical, I think was right in the neighborhood of 20 million or so. Ag education incentive grants, the ag programs, which is still a standalone categorical, was a little bit short of $5 million or so.
So it's significantly addressing the program.
Right. And in fact, even if you think about it, adding in the local match, means in this first year that if those grant funds are fully allocated, there would be $800 million in expenditures as compared to approximately $400 million at the peak in terms of state categorical funding provided for CTE.
And then you had the two Steinberg proposals that were in $250 million each, is my recollection, which were
Right.
designed to be one time, remember? For the-
Right.
And that was specifically
Pathway
career
grants.
pathways. So we're getting at an issue that we've talked about before in this boardroom. And that was that when they did LCFF, they used a dollar figure that matched what we spent in the 12-13 fiscal year, which is after we did all the budget cuts. And that would be the goal that you would get to after you spend 8 years implementing LCFF. So we wait 8 years to get to a number that's wholly inadequate. So that's what created the imperative with the governor and others to say, we've got to revisit this issue because these programs are going to starve. And when they gave that money out on a 9-12 grade span to every district, including this one, it put you in a position of saying, we don't have enough money really to do anything very well the way we used to do it, and you really have to start considering, is this time for us to start to think about doing something on our own that we can do creatively, or do we participate in a program that's going to be hurting real bad with SCROC? There were all these options on the table. This package that the legislature has passed has helped significantly in inject greater investment in the program and give us a better chance. And not only that, there's one legislator, Senator McGuire, who had a bill this year to spend $600 million each year, permanent ongoing money, and give that out to everybody on an ongoing basis, no match. So it was real clear to the governor, legislature has a very positive sentiment about CTE and ROP programs, and they want to see the governor doing something serious about this. So it wasn't something he could ignore, and that was a great thing for us, and I think the compromise ended up really being a positive thing.
I have a question, and it's a very practical question. As of June 30th, the money for the ROCs and the Ps goes away. It ends June 30th, okay? And that's in less than a week, okay? Now, you've talked to the Association of the ROPs. So explain to me how these ROPs are going to do the one-to-one match when their funding has gone away as of June 30th.
Well, I think I'll start by painting.
I'm sure you discussed it with them,
Right.
how this is all going to come
So,
about.
but I'll start by painting a slightly even bleaker picture, and that is that the funding for ROCPs went away on July 1st, 2013,
That's correct.
right? There has
Got
been
the maintenance of effort
There
for 2
has
years.
been no funding for ROCP in 2013-14, 2014-15. There was the maintenance of effort requirement, but the maintenance of effort requirement was, a very loose sort of requirement in the sense that when that was passed, we know that there were a number of entities that just decided to cut their CTE funding, their ROCP expenditures immediately, and actually went back into their budget. Remember, we were in budget flexibility at that time.
And that would include the county offices.
Some,
Big time.
a
Big
couple
time.
of county offices, did this, and some districts that were members of JPAs did this. And they basically reposted those expenditures to no longer be ROCP expenditures, to be something else, which they could do under budget flexibility. And thus, they established a zero MOE for themselves and maintained that over the next 2 years. So it was a pretty bleak picture. As I mentioned, about 20 of the ROCPs are dysfunctional or dissolving, and many of them starting July 1st, or many of those starting July 1st are dissolved. Where that money is going to come from, I think, is a couple of places. One is, we know that in some of the county-operated programs, the county and superintendents have a very strong commitment to career technical education. And, we could name some of those. The Butte County Superintendent of Schools was a former ROP director, right, earlier in his career. Napa County Superintendent of Schools, Santa Barbara County. So a number of those counties have made commitments to continue providing some of the funds or some of the services as they go forward. So that commitment to provide those resources then will constitute their local match, right? And it really is almost the same in JPAs in the sense that districts who have had strong commitments to the programs offered through the ROP or the ROC, that they belong to, the JPA that they belong to, have made a commitment to continue to put funds towards supporting the efforts of that JPA. And those funds then would constitute the resources available to count as local match, in their proposal. Now, where does that money come from? In the cases of the county offices, it's coming out of their general fund budget. In the case of districts, members of JPAs, it's coming out of your general fund budget. The one thing I would say about districts is that school districts are receiving, in a transitional sort of way, amounts towards this grade 9 through 12 grade span adjustment. And the genesis of the funding for that grade 9 through 12 grade span adjustment is that the governor's staff took the total amount appropriated for CTE, the appropriations that we talked about that historically existed, divided it by grade 9 through 12 ADA, and that's how they arrived at a dollar amount that they translated into a percentage of the LCFF base grant.
About 2.5%.
Right, 2.6%, I think it is. And so that was where that money, to a certain extent, is coming from what used to be career technical education money. And part of the argument, even the administration makes this, although they definitely say that's discretionary money, it doesn't have to be spent on anything. But if somebody were to ask the administration, where does our local effort come from? Where does our local match come from? They'll point to that grade 9 through 12 grade span adjustment and say, it's right there. That's CTE money if you put it forward and decide to make it CTE.
The other argument they make, and it's a good one, is that the governor has so accelerated his investment in LCFF that that grade span piece was going to take 8 years to get to. Well, if you look at the LAO's analysis, for example, of this budget, we are now 90% of the way of fully implemented LCFF. Well, that would obviously apply to that piece too. So our arguments early on about how long is it going to take for us to get the full 9-12 grade span that we could then apply to Rock Rope is now a little less strong of an argument because we're really getting to the point where that's getting fully funded.
It will still take that long,
Yeah.
but the incremental
That last
increases we're
10%.
going to see are going to be very much smaller over the next few years. The one final comment I wanted to make too was to talk just real briefly about the one-time nature of this funding. The funding is for 3 years, but it's the 400, 300, 200 million, but it is one-time funds. The governor's vision of this, and we should say that in some sense this was not the governor's proposal initially. This came from his staff, and the governor bought into it. That was probably one reason why the governor was willing to just veto the whole thing if he didn't get his way. But this one-time money plays into the governor's vision that this is bridge funding, effectively. That is, it's funding that takes us from where we are post MOE to a point where districts will have enough of the 9-12 grade span money to sustain programs into the future. And it will also give 3 years for these programs to generate other funding sources, to work with business, to work with labor, to secure other grant funding or whatever it is. And that's the governor's vision. However, over in the legislature, it's clear that the legislators have a different idea, and they would like to see this sort of program or something similar to it funded in an ongoing fashion. The problem that they faced, they didn't push for this with the governor this year, but the problem they faced is there's a ton of one-time money that's available, that spike that we talked about. But the ongoing money, they had a different priority in the legislature for any additional ongoing money, and that was basically early childhood education and childcare. That was the #1 priority. We were thrilled that career technical education this year jumped up to what I think is the #2 budget priority in the legislature. And that's what got us to $900 million.
Because we lost our biggest advocate, Darrell Steinberg, term
Right.
limit out.
Did you see the editorial from, what's his name, Dan Walters, talking about the
Yes.
demise of voc ed?
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And this was all generated by the governor's decision to omit funding for the ROCPs 2.5 years ago. In his proposed budget in January, with no discussion with anyone, it just disappeared.
Right.
And no one said anything. No one stood up, no one yelled.
And now they are. The legislature
Well,
is
now
not
they
happy.
are, but,
Yeah.
you know,
Little
but
late.
at the time, because I went up to Sacramento to lobby on it.
Yeah.
And on behalf of SCROC, along with some of the SCROC people, and we said, why did this happen? How did this happen? Everyone said, oh, it must have been an oversight.
No.
Right. No, I'm serious. This is what
Yeah.
they were telling us in Sacramento. Oh, it's an oversight, you know, this, that, and the other. So, but the problem's been generated because a decision was made behind the scenes with whomever the governor talked to in creating his budget in January to just eliminate the whole program without giving anyone any advance notice. It
Right,
just
right.
poof, disappeared. And now
Well,
here
it's
we
just-
are trying to,
Yeah.
I
to
think it's a
fix
fil-
something
Yeah.
that shouldn't
It's a
have.
philosophical opposition to categorical programs.
Yeah.
So the challenge that we have, and I really think Jerry did a masterful job and worked on this for 2 years, is to design a program that protects the interests of those students, you know, that whole system that looks like a categorical, acts like a categorical, but you can't call it a categorical
Right.
because they don't want it a categorical.
But the ag people got kept.
There are very few.
Well,
and-
but
and-
let,
yeah.
you know,
This is
Yeah.
going to be boring for everyone else.
there
They don't
are.
want
I
to
do
hear all
wanna-
this, but I mean, I do know some of the nuances of all this.
Yeah.
He does make exceptions when it's convenient,
yeah.
which is his right.
Well, I think it was a little bit more than convenience, and I do want to amend something that Jack said. It's not just, it wasn't just in 2013 especially, it wasn't just this aversity to categorical programs. It's also, remember the numbers that I gave you, less than 5 million for ag education, right? 20 million for California Partnership Academies, $370 million for ROCPs, right? It was simply a matter of, and Department of Finance, you know, admitted this to me, they could not pencil out
LCFF.
the LCFF in the way that they had to do it to guarantee no losers under LCFF in their definition
Well, we
of
consider
loser.
ourselves
Right,
losers
and
under
I
LCFF,
understand that
so I-
completely. And
I
that's-
disagree with them
And that's
there.
why I said, in their definition, what was a loser, they couldn't pencil out their plan for LCFF without that $370 million. They could do it without the 20 and without the 5, but they couldn't do it without the 370. And we were dead in the water at that point, and we, you know, worked, you know, till late in the night a lot, you know, in that year to try to derail the subsuming ROCP funding into the LCFF. But-
Well, and the pressure did work on forcing him to accept a 9-12 grade span piece that addressed it and came directly for that money. But it was just a bad fix to the problem that was never going to work and it was going to require revisit it, and we're not done. I believe very strongly that when you look at what the governor's put in this budget, it takes him to the end of his tenure. And that in the race for governor to succeed him, there is no red-blooded politician in this state, I don't care what party they are, that is not going to get on the CTE ROP bandwagon because it's very strongly felt by voters in this state. And that we may get finally the program that we need to get, but that it just is at cross purposes with this philosophy he has about categoricals, that we'll be able to get it going again. The thing I resented the most about what LCFF did was that it got rid of things for the sake of getting rid of them without asking the question, are these programs good? Are they important? Should we be doing them? Well, don't pay no attention to that. We have a structure that we're after, and the structure was more important than what the substance of the program's working.
And I can make Kevin's point back in last time, and this may be a good segue, 30 seconds on the school bond that the governor isn't proposing. 2006, last time we had a bond, and Barrett Snyder, one of our partners, ran it, and I was involved as a state superintendent, saw all the polling. You know what jumped out? Career technical education, off the chart, more than class size, more than modernization for restrooms or anything else. And so the entire campaign was run. It was a almost $12 billion measure, Prop 1B. There was $500 million for career tech. Every commercial, if you think back, was career tech. That's where the public was. The governor's not for a school bond. There was no bond in his proposal in January, nor in May, nor now. 2 days after he released his budget in January, the building community announced they were going to finance and circulate a school construction bond. We had been meeting with them for a couple of years, the building folks. They took many of our suggestions, including one you're going to like, but they didn't listen to us on including UC and CSU. So the bond measure that's in circulation, signatures have been gathered for about 75% of those that are needed. Now, a little inside political baseball. It's the way you calculate how many signatures you need for an initiative that's in circulation is it's a percentage of those that voted in the last gubernatorial election. And remember the last gubernatorial election? Low turnout. So it's going to be very easy. Governor Brown knows that it's going to be easy to qualify a host of initiatives and has said, get ready for a long ballot when you go vote in 2016. So it's going to qualify,
As you
no
say,
question.
Take a sandwich.
You're going to need a sandwich while you're voting. But we're 75% of the way there now with the signatures, so it's easily good. The money's there. The proposal is for $9 billion, $3 billion for modernization, which is very important here, $3 billion for new construction, $2 billion for community colleges, $500 million for career technical education, and $500 million for charter schools. The state arm that administers the building process, OPSC, Office of Public School Construction, the governor in their budget actually cut them about 30%, $4 million. And eliminated about 40 PYs. So that tells you where he is on this. But a friend of mine told me the other day it was a lot of attrition. And so it's a lot of people that, because of no activity or very little activity, that's why they're there. My prediction, last line, is that eventually one qualifies and that we're ready to hand in the signatures, the governor may engage and say, let's sit down and talk, because he may have a different concept, different vision, may want to include higher ed, and because he has done a very good job of bringing down the bond of indebtedness of the state, might not want to do $9 billion, might want to be somewhat south of that.
I want to say thank you for a fabulous presentation. The best presentation we've had in a while. I mean, just wonderful. I mean, I can follow. I don't know that everyone else. But I really appreciate everything you've done behind the scenes.
Yeah, I mean,
wonderful.
I have to
Thank you.
jockey for a seat in, like, you know, the Moscone Center to even tell if Kevin's sitting up there. So, you know, I feel like I'm sitting behind the Yankee dugout or something.
Yeah, we always really do appreciate, we know you carve out a lot of extra time compared to our size and our commitment to how much we spend on lobbying, that we really do appreciate the efforts you make.
Well, you know, I know that some of you who've been on the board for a little while may know this, but for those of you that are newer, one of the reasons why we hold dear this relationship is you may know that you were the very first contract I had as a lobbyist. So, and it goes back to when Pearl Luzuka was here. And,
Did you ever know Ken Hall?
And so,
Oh,
yeah,
sure.
and so,
Oh,
you know, we
absolutely.
mentor.
First
yeah.
contract ever.
Yeah.
Because I was working, this is how old I am, was working in Long Beach Unified at the time as their attorney. And we were his first contract, and he held that
Yeah.
dear.
So
And,
it's,
I
you
mean,
know.
we got anything we needed, he rolled out the red carpet for us,
Yeah.
and we've always appreciated it over the years, so.
You'll appreciate it's the lowest contract we have, but it's just
Just-
send them, you know.
We're actually
The
quite proud of
superintendent's
that.
always on that, yeah.
We're pretty
Superintendent's always on
cheap
top
down
of
here.
that.
But
But still,
thank you.
it's,
Call you tomorrow.
it's a pleasure to be here in advance
Thank you for
of
sharing
us-
that with the community.
in advance of us talking to all the other districts that we're going to do now in the next coming
Yeah.
weeks at those budget workshops. And this means Lydia doesn't have to go to one of those 3-hour budget workshops. But anyways, we really
always see
appreciate
her
the
there.
opportunity.
You are aware of a major, I don't want to call it residue, but major thing that happened as a result of our Capitol convoy this year with the young man who used to be our student board
yeah.
member?
Actually, I was remiss. I was going to congratulate you and his family, you know, most recent appointee to the State Board of
Board.
Education
Oh, yeah.
as the student member for the upcoming year,
Yeah.
right, right.
And the governor's office, actually, the woman that's the advisor to the governor, in the governor's private office, worked for Jack. So we got a little heads up on that and said, just want to let you know, the group that you had in here.
And
That's a
You know, Jack,
full-fledged
she
vote.
used to work for you, the head lady in education in the governor's office?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I want you to talk to
Kathy
her.
McBride.
Yes.
And then the
No,
depart-
no, I want you, she promised she would come down to Scrock and visit us.
Oh, okay, yeah.
She's never shown up yet.
Oh, okay.
Would you tell her to please come down? The invitation is still out there for her, and it's certainly
I'll tell you.
easier.
She worked for me in San Luis Obispo. And
Okay.
then also, just today, as we were at, and I've known this for a couple of days, but Superintendent Torlakson is now going to have co-chiefs. And one of the chief deputies, and one of them is Michelle Zumant, who ran my San Luis Obispo district office for me when I was in the Senate, and then was really our go-to person to cut through the bureaucracy.
Yes.
Was the chief deputy's assistant, and she's going to be the co-chief now. So really pleased for Michelle.
So I appreciate Mr. Sharp reminding me, because I actually wrote something down, that's why I have my phone out, about Mr. McFarland. From the governor's staff, this is a direct quote. We found him to be a thoughtful young man who we think will be a great addition to the State Board of
Yeah.
Education.
And that's a full-fledged voting member, you know. I mean, when I was, I always called, never took for granted. You have to work those votes just like you did everybody else.
Oh, he's a full-fledged voter?
Absolutely.
Yes.
When we ever have a
Absolutely.
tough vote up, Jack always reminds us,
Start
go
counting.
lobby the student member.
Absolutely.
They have the same vote everybody else has.
Co-equal.
But I will tell
I'm
you,
going to Facebook message his mom tonight and tell her that.
Oh,
you
yeah.
said
There
that.
you go.
Oh, yeah, that's a.
So with regard to, though, that request, I think Jack still has some traction with Kathy. But he would have been able to guarantee it if she still worked for him. But, you know, we'll do what we can.
Well, anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you so
Thank you,
much.
Don.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for kind words. Very nice, thank you.
Appreciate it.
So I think we should go to the report of the Southern California Regional Occupational Center representative.
Okay, well, what I was planning on doing is reading, in yesterday's Daily Breeze, there was, on the editorial page, a commentary by a man by the name of Dan Walters, who's a political columnist for the Sacramento Bee, and he periodically shares his insights and his opinion about things that are going on. And it's not too long, so just bear with me, because I think it's an interesting framework to this whole conversation. And his commentary begins with, vocational ed is endangered again. Arnold Schwarzenegger's governorship can be faulted for many failings, but he also deserves credit for some accomplishments. Not the least was pulling vocational education, training for the real work of a prosperous society back from the brink of extinction. It's now called Career Technical Education, or CTE. It's not only vital for a functioning economy, but vital for those who lack interest in and/or aptitude for collegiate education, but want careers in well-paying, skilled fields. As governor, he publicly touted CTE in high schools and community colleges and backed it with more state aid. Later, as president pro tem of the state senate, Darrell Steinberg also beat the drums for CTE. Both are gone from the Capitol, and CTE is once again in peril. Schwarzenegger's successor, Jerry Brown, has advocated successfully the elimination of earmarked state school aid called categoricals, saying he wants to maximize local decision-making. With obvious reluctance, he agreed to some earmarked CTE money, but he wants to phase it out over several years, leaving it to local school officials to allocate support for job-related instruction. In large urban districts, there is little appetite, and I might add, in most school districts, there is little appetite for CTE, which is more expensive than ordinary classroom instruction, requires teachers with specialized knowledge, and runs counter to the prevailing college-for-all mentality. Los Angeles Unified School District, for example, has one of the state's highest dropout rates, but for the past decade has required on paper that high school students take and pass a full slate of college prep classes. The superintendent, Ramon Cortines, is trying to change the policy, but it's still in place, even if widely ignored. Such one-size-fits-all decrees send the message that anyone who doesn't have a college degree is somehow a lesser person. And it shortchanges those kids who could be well-paid auto mechanics, machine tool operators, or computer technicians, jobs that modern society needs done. There are serious shortages of skilled workers. And I'd just like to add my own editorial comments to the whole thing. In this district, we've historically taken the position that we're here to educate all children to the best of their ability. For most, we're very fortunate. For most of the children in this district, they're going to go on to college. And I presume most of them successfully graduate from college, although we don't really have any accurate records on that. But we know they go to college. But there are a lot of students, even here in this district and in many of the surrounding districts, who either aren't going to go to college because they have no interest in it or they don't have the capability of succeeding in college. But there are a number of jobs out there in the labor market for which they can be trained right now in high school so that they can be successful citizens as adults and have well-paying jobs. And the types of jobs I'm talking about are plumber, electrician, roofer, HVAC, auto mechanics, yes. There's just a whole slug of jobs out there, including medical, dental assistants. These are all people that work for small businesses. And if you look at Torrance is a large city, but it's still a small city. And while it has some major corporations there, it has thousands of small businesses who currently rely on SCROC, or SoCal ROC, to train the entry-level people into their fields. And I'm talking about attorneys, accountants, doctors, all sorts of people, printers. And if you spend any time down in Torrance and talk to the people who live there, you'll find that many of them went to SCROC, and they're small businessmen, and they attribute their success today in what they learned at SCROC. They may not have been college material at the time they started SCROC. They may have gone on to college, but they got their first taste of what they wanted to do in the real working world, not in their high schools, but at SCROC, because they had an opportunity to learn a skill, and they got internships, which gave them the skills they needed to be successful in that field. So I guess my point is SCROC has been and continues to be a part of the economic engine down in Torrance. It supports all those small businesses, and it's an important thing for all school districts who are members of the JPA, because we all have students who aren't going to successfully go on to college, and it gives them an alternative. And I'm just a real believer in it, obviously. And I would invite anyone to come down and see what a great little program it is, because it's done wonderful things for children. So that's all I want to say, but as you can tell, I would like to say SCROC and continue the good work that it's been doing for almost 2 generations. So that's all I have to say.
Thanks. Do you want to add anything else as a board member? I mean, we also have board member reports.
Well, yeah. I happened to be on a river cruise and went to Vienna and had the opportunity to visit the Vienna Boys Choir. And not only did I get to hear them, but I got to see where they live. I got to see the schools where they're educated. And it's a very interesting system they have in Vienna, because they take boys and girls at the elementary level. They take 120 of them, and they're taught, the regular schooling, and then they're trained, vocally and with instruments. And then after 6th grade, the girls are not allowed to continue in the school, but only the boys who are chosen for the choir can continue, and that's from the age of 10 to 14. So basically, kind of middle school. And then at the age of 14, they have to retire from the choir because their voices start to change. And at that point, they have a high school they can go on the campus. And the girls are invited back, and they continue to sing in Sunday services. And they have the most beautiful voices you have ever heard. They are just incredible. And their school is located in a former hunting lodge of the old Habsburg monarchy. You know, they had all these palaces and houses. This was just, you know. And they have kept 3 of the rooms in the original way the Habsburgs lived, which is, of course, extravagant. And the rest of it is dormitories and classrooms and everything. But anyway, so I just want you to know that even though I was on a trip, I did look at the educational opportunities in another country. So that's all I have to add.
Right. Technology Advisory Committee, do we have anything to report?
No.
Okay, and the School Facilities Committee it doesn't have anything to report. Will actually be on the next board agenda in July, hopefully. Malcolm?
As I mentioned, the last meeting, I covered the monthly mayor's luncheon that was held last Wednesday, and as I mentioned earlier, one of the topics of discussion was the water situation. And as I mentioned the previous meeting, I anticipated the discussion what we were going to be doing as elected bodies with regarding to broadcasts after October when the franchise agreement with Cox expires. And with the exception of my city, Rolling Hills, which does not and has no plans on broadcasting anytime in the future. Rancho Palos Verdes is continuing to, will have Channel 33. The president of the library district was also at the meeting and expressed interest in using Channel 33. I mentioned that we were looking at perhaps streaming options. And maybe we can even look at a combination of streaming plus what we're doing now with our taping. The others emphasize that particularly with our older population, they're more used to getting their information from a television set than from a computer or handheld device. So we may want to have that in consideration. But anyway, we had a conversation about that last Wednesday.
Thanks. Tony? Linda?
I just had a couple quick things. I just wanted to thank the Ed Foundation again for their support of our summer school program. Based on the traffic I've seen around the peninsula, it's very popular this year at a bunch of the schools. I know our teachers had expressed some concern about online classes taking students away, and so I'm hoping by next year we'll have that taken care of, but looks like the programs are all going pretty well. And the last thing I just wanted to say was I was happy to see the legislature, speaking of the legislature, take the next step on getting the vaccine law passed in California, and whatever we can do to support our district nurse and getting the word out once that becomes a final decision. It wasn't final today, but it was the next hurdle was passed.
No, it's just the governor's signature.
Governor's signature,
Yep.
Which for me is great news.
All right, thank you. Public communication on non-agenda items. Connie Sullivan.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm Connie Sullivan, and I'm with the Palos Verdes Democrats. And the Palos Verdes Democrats would respectfully request that your board allow a free speech area within the Peninsula High School Sunday Farmers Market. As some of you may know, we used to set up a table at the farmers market when it was at the shopping center. Did that for about 10 years. Not just us, but anybody who wanted to pretty much could come there and set up a table on a first-come, first-served basis. We never had any problems. No fights broke out. We're all adults. It worked out well. I think even some of you might have visited us. So we've been doing that for 10 years. We have a track record. And now, as I understand it, when the farmers market was negotiating to move to Penn High, that the manager tells me that he included or wanted to include a free speech area, but was told that that was against school district policy. And so we're kind of up in the air right now. We have been on your website. We've looked at your policies. We see a couple that might apply, but they don't really seem to preclude this activity within the rented space of the farmers market. So I'm just here to ask you to please allow that to be included within the rental space of the farmers market. Thank you.
Thanks. It's news to us, so we'll send your request on to the staff, and we'll get back to you. Hans Grellman.
Good evening, school board members. My name is Hans Grellman. I've lived in Palos Verdes Estates for just over 40 years. I belong to the group Occupy PV, which a number of Palos Verdes residents formed in 2011 after Occupy Wall Street brought national attention to the growing economic inequality in our economy. Occupy PV has had a table at the Peninsula Shopping Center Farmers Market since 2011 at a free speech area that has existed there for more than 10 years. We were just one of a number of political and other groups using our constitutional right to freely discuss political, economic, and environmental issues. This free speech area gave political clubs, local city council candidates, and non-party affiliated groups like ours the opportunity to provide information to and get feedback from citizens visiting our tables. Many market goers told us that they liked this example of democracy in action. Occupy PV and other groups, as you've just heard, would like to have the opportunity to continue this free speech tradition at the new location for the farmers market at Peninsula High School. For this reason, we have sent you an email requesting that the Unified School District designate a limited public forum at Peninsula High School on Sundays when the farmers market is open. We look forward to discussing this with you further. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Joan Davidson.
Just a quick thanks to the people who came to speak about a free speech table. I was wanting to talk tonight about funding. This district is very fortunate in having lots of funding. All different kinds of funding. The parcel tax funding, many people have spoken up in the recent last month or so, and it's clear if you look at the budget pages, and I hope you take the opportunity and actually look at the budget pages office by office between 2009 to the end of 2013, to see that there was money allocated by footnotes and designation for people who were not supposed to be getting it in the businesses' offices. Please take a look, because it says in the script that we called to support this measure M in 2011, and before that, no administrative salaries should be spent by the parcel tax. 2, I just need to figure out, and maybe you will be talking about funding priorities for the future. You're getting a lot of money, and that's going to be a huge issue. I hope you don't spend it all on computers. I really hope you don't do that. Tonight, your budget orders, if you take a look at it, I don't know if you take the opportunity to do that, you're spending almost $100,000 just tonight on computers and other things, but you have a surplus sale, and you're selling Dell computers for $1.80. When you buy computers, they become obsolete. Please don't buy more computers with this one-time money. Do something great for kids. In early February, I gave the board a must-do checklist that I found online from another law firm that advises districts, and I looked at some of the contracts tonight. Some of them have provisions, thank you, that are protecting kids, but one of them does not. It's they have a clause that they can do subcontracting. It's Bradford Networks, And if they can subcontract, you don't have an agreement with them, you have it just with that company. The LCSFF funding formula that Mr. Brown created, I saw Larry at the beginning, I'm going to just give this to you. Please be aware that by 2020, our funding is not going to be going sky high, because Mr. Brown doesn't like us very much, because he called us out in 2 LA Times articles as the well-heeled community for the last 2 years. So he's taking our money, if you will, tax dollars, and handing it off to other needy districts. So by the year 2020, PV will get $9,100 approximately per child, but Centinela Valley will get over $14,000 per child. So you need to save that money for a rainy day. I hope you're going to do that. LA Unified just gave the teachers a 10% raise, but has a deficit. Makes no sense, and I don't understand their budgeting. I never will. I want to support Barbara in what she's talking about with SCROC real quick, because it is so important. It serves all the special ed kids. And not only that, I called there recently, excuse me, and I thought they still had a lot of the art classes, the screen printing and graphic prints. They've canceled that. That is so important, and it would be disingenuous of our governor to support Common Core, which is college and career ready, with all this money, without supporting the career ready part. Where's that component? So Barbara, anything I can do to help you, count me in. Thanks.
Thank you. Sandy, Valeri?
Good evening. At our meeting a couple weeks ago, I suggested that this board keep faith with the voters who voted for the parcel tax and not spend it on administrative salaries as we promised we would not, but just spend its salary portion only for teachers, because we need to hire and keep more teachers, and not to spend any of that money on administrative salaries. And I heard an answer back that sounded not just like no, but hell no, because we don't care what we said in the fact sheet. Fact sheet doesn't mean anything. Only thing that matters is what's in the ballot wording, and we don't really care about the fact sheet. We can basically hang it in your bathroom. It doesn't mean anything. So I thought that was pretty disingenuous and not really a good way to run a district at all, not a way to keep faith with our voters. I went and I checked the actuals of what we've actually been spending our parcel tax money on. And I looked, I cannot tell what is an administrative salary or not. A lot of our administrators are in fact certified individuals. And the only thing I can tell from the actuals are what are certified versus classified salary. The classified salaries, in 07 and 08, we spent approximately $38,878. These are actuals. In 08, 09, that went up to $56,358,000. In 08 and 09, 10, that went down to just a little over $30,000. In 10, 11, it went down less to just $24,000. And then in 11, 12, suddenly it doubled again to $50,000. And then all of a sudden something strange happened in 13, 14. We budgeted for about $25,000 in classified salaries, but we spent $317,814. I'm sorry, $317,504 in classified salaries on Measure M alone. $317,000, almost $300,000 over what we budgeted of Measure M money on classified salaries that could have been spent on teachers. Now, I don't know about you, but I remember last year. Last year was the year where people complained about the fact that all of a sudden our class sizes in 4th and 5th grade went to about 37, 38 kids per class. And everybody was complaining about the fact that we had combo classes in every single school. Well, we were used to them at Mary Catalina because we're the ugly stepchild and we'd always had combo classes. But where everybody else had 1 or 2, we actually had 3 combo classes at Mary Catalina last year. We could have used an extra teacher there. But no, you're off hiring, I don't know who, classified people on Measure M instead of hiring back teachers. That was actually last year at Mary Catalina, where we had, actually you upended our special services department. We had the entire 4th and 5th grade classes. We had no special services for them at all. They were entirely, they didn't have their needs met at all. they were non-compliant. And they didn't, my child and others weren't taught math at all. No math teacher. Zero math. If you guys remember that, you up there on the board, you remember the letters I wrote. It took until, what, middle of April to start teaching math to my child? But you spent $317,000 on classified employees in Measure M. So you had money,
Thank you.
but you don't care to spend it on the kids.
Thank you, and I will renew my offer. I said last time you made these comments, if you'd like to go over the numbers and get the accurate numbers, I'll be happy to work.
Actual numbers that
I'll be happy, I
of
will,
the budget book.
I will be happy to help you with that. Thank you.
I would be happy to show it to you today.
All right. We're on to discussion item M1.
Okay, at this point, I'd like to bring forward Mr. Tim Carty from Piper Jaffray. I told Mr. Carty earlier today that he should expect to be on around 7:15 or 7:20.
I hope you've enjoyed your...
I later told him that I owe him a lunch. But Mr. Carty,
And make sure it's an expensive place.
Well, consider it constituent education on our part, right?
Yes, no, I enjoyed listening to some of the presentations. I will try to be brief. Good evening, Mr. President, members of the board, Mr. Carty. Here really to just follow up on the discussion we had at the last board meeting, the telephone. What's before you tonight is really the resolution and accompanying documents putting in place what we hope, cross our fingers for the next couple of weeks, will be the implementation of the second phase of the bond refinancing program, the first phase of which we accomplished last year. And as I shared with you at the previous meeting, we've got about $9 million or so worth of bonds that are eligible and we think attractive for the district to refinance and lower the tax burden on the community. One of the things that is going to help us is due to the very capable presentation in San Francisco of your staff to Moody's Investor Service. We learned today that our credit rating was successfully reconfirmed at the AA1 level, which for Moody's is the highest credit rating that they assign to California school districts. So one of the things we did with Don and Lydia today was reviewed their draft report, which was again very complimentary of the district and the district's finances, the management, and all the things that go into a credit rating. So if you approve the resolution this evening, the game plan is to try to get the offering statement for the bonds next week, posted electronically and available to the investing public, and the week after next, hopefully, to try to get into the marketplace. You know, the savings, you know, could be, I would say, as high as $900,000 to $1 million net. I think anything north of $300,000 or $400,000 net would be an attractive level of savings, considering it's a $9 million package. So even at $300,000 or $400,000, we would, I think, satisfy the threshold, the general standard for government agencies at which a bond refinancing is attractive. But I think, cross our fingers, if market conditions hold, hopefully we can deliver more than that to the community. So I'm available to answer any questions. I know you've already had a lot of information shared with you, and it's already been a long night. But I don't know, Don, or Lydia, if you can think of anything else that would be appropriate. But I think congratulations to the district on the credit rating. There's only a handful of school districts in California that have that AA1 rating. So that's good news that we learned today. And as I say, the resolution before you in the action item is the governmental approval required to then allow us to get to the next step and hopefully get into the marketplace in the next couple of weeks.
So the reason we're refinancing these bonds is to save the taxpayers of the community money, correct?
That's right. A
Okay.
couple of
That's
things.
the sole reason why we're doing it.
Yeah, that's the sole reason. There's no real benefit to the school district for doing this. You don't get any money out of this. All of the savings go back to the taxpayers. As I shared with you last time, no extending the term. So the same number of years the taxpayers would pay on the old bonds if we did nothing. They'll pay on the new bonds. So it's just like refinancing a home mortgage. We're just replacing higher interest rate bonds with lower interest rate bonds, and 100% of the savings goes to the benefit of the taxpayers.
I do have one question, and it has to do with the resolution, the board agenda, not the resolution itself, but the board agenda, and I don't know if you've had that in front of you. but-
I had.
Well, let me just read it has to do with two numbers, okay, Tim? So it's resolution number 412014/15, authorize the sale and issuance of not to exceed 17 million general obligation refunding bonds. So,
Right.
okay, but later on in the resolution, it says we're really going to just recommend that the 2005 bonds totaling 9,325,000 be refinanced. Could you just, for someone who's uneducated about all this, explain the difference between the two numbers?
Between the two numbers, sure. So there are really $17 million worth of bonds that are eligible to be refinanced.
Okay.
As we sit here today, it only makes sense, economic sense for the community to refinance the 9-point-something million. But stranger things have happened. If in the next couple of weeks, Greece decides to accept or not accept, the Federal Reserve
Find a
chairwoman...
bucket of gold at the end of the rainbow, right?
Yeah,
And pay
the
off
Federal
debt.
Reserve chairwoman says something unexpected, and for some reason, interest rates were to drop precipitously in the next couple of weeks, and we could go higher than that 9 million, we would want to do that.
Okay.
So that's really the difference. Realistically, it's probably going to be the 9, but we'd rather have authority to go higher if in the next 2 weeks something favorable happens.
So the bottom line is the other bonds just don't have enough of an interest rate savings to justify the expense.
Exactly. They don't have enough of an interest rate. Now, that's not to say a year from now, we might then have the third stage of the refinancing package. So it's not uncommon for a school district that has multiple issues of bonds to do a refinancing once a year or once every 2 years. We did that last year, part 1. So it's not that we may never refinance the difference between the 17 and the 9. It may just be right now it doesn't benefit the community.
All right, any questions?
Answered all my questions, thank you.
Pleasure.
All right, someone want to make a motion, please?
Yeah. I move that the board approve resolution number 41-2014/15, authorizing the sale and issuance of not to exceed $17 million aggregate principal amount of the district's general obligation refunding bonds in one or more series, approving the forms of and authorizing the execution and delivery of one or more escrow agreements, bond purchase agreements, and continuing disclosure certificates, approving the form and authorizing a method for review and approval by members of the board of one or more official statements, and authorizing the execution of necessary documents and certificates and related actions.
Second.
And now, Malcolm, I want you to explain to everyone what that all means.
Oh, it took me 2 semesters to get out of accounting.
It means we're saving money.
Any discussion? Okay, so we'll go roll call. Barbara?
Aye.
Malcolm?
Aye.
Tony?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, 5-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim.
My
Appreciate
pleasure.
it.
Thanks for having me, and we will look forward to working with Lydia and Don and everyone else.
And you will send up a signal flare or something to let us know when you go to market? And
Yes, I mean, I would be happy to come back and report after we've had the sale. Right now, the sale is tentatively scheduled for that week after the 4th of July.
Well, Malcolm wants to invest, that's why he's asking.
no, yeah.
Oh, Malcolm, well, now with the savings may be greater if we can then talk Malcolm into a, yeah, I would be happy when it's finished to come back if that's...
Well, I remember in 2014, I think, when we went to market, limited, I think we even got a copy of the prospectus, and
Yeah.
we got the whole package emailed to us. Just general interest.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, one of the things, and we can talk a little bit about this, Don, as we get closer, but sometimes school districts will put something up on their website or just let the community know that, bonds are going to be available for sale. Sometimes members of the community are interested. So we can talk about if we think that would be something that you'd like to do. There's SEC rules on what you can't say much. You can say on or about, there may be a bond sale, and here's a number to call if members of the community are interested. So if we think, if, Don, you get feedback that board members would be interested in that.
I know we had a former superintendent who bought bonds from.
Who bought some bonds?
He's getting refinanced out of them too, apparently.
He may be refinanced out of them. But no, we could certainly do that if that's of interest. Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Tim, thank you.
Night.
Larry, we've got Codeine sitting there on the playground equipment. Do you think at some point we could?
Yeah, I'll just do the next two things and we'll go to it. M2.
Okay, as we come to the end of the 2014-15 school year, we'd like to take a last opportunity to thank our retiring certificated employees, our teachers, and our administrators for providing excellent service to the thousands of Palos Verdes students during their careers, the great success they've helped our schools achieve, and how they've positively guided and changed lives for the better. We have 7 certificated teachers and health and human service professionals retiring as of June 30th, and 3 administrators. And we thank them for their service.
All right, I need a motion, please.
I move that the board adopt resolution number 42-2014/15, saluting and thanking the 2014-15 certificated employee retirees of the PVPUSD.
Second.
Discussion? There's some great names on that list. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
M3.
And we would also like to say a thank you to our retiring classified employees as we come to the end of the school year. These classified employees have served a vital role in providing for the welfare and safety of our students. They've served to support the excellent education programs in the district, and they're the backbone of support for our teachers, students, and administrators. And we have 5 classified employees retiring officially in just a few more days. We'd like to recognize them.
I'll make a motion for that one. Do I need to read it all?
Just the title.
Oh, that we adopt resolution 43-2014-15.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Discussion? Good names on that list, too. All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you, John. And thank our dedicated employees. Barbara's suggestion is probably a good idea, moving up P1 to discuss the playground equipment now, so we're not keeping people here all night to talk about playground equipment.
Look
Bet
at
they
the
would've liked that
smiles on their
suggestion
faces,
earlier.
you know.
Of course, the people that are being pushed back afterwards behind you are looking at us like too bad. But
Codeine, they can join you if you want. Or do you want them to join you? No, go sit down. I was just saying they can join you up front if you want.
I can't walk now. I've been sitting. Shake it off.
So while they come up, I'm going to talk a little bit about the process that we went through. Debbie Wells took a look at CMAS to find out which playground vendors already had bids out there that we could piggyback on and achieve some savings through the piggyback process. And the three vendors that had piggybackable bids were Landscape Structures, Miracle Recreation Equipment, and Dave Bang and Associates. And the district has used all three vendors before in the past. And so we got a total of about 9 to 10 different proposals and designs from these vendors that ranged anywhere from $50,000 to $90,000. So Codeine met with Debbie and the vendors, and the one design that she finally selected was about $77,000. And I'm going to put that design up here, so if we could turn that on. Codeine currently has $8,000 from her PTA, $8,000 from PEF, which means that out of the VILA funds, she would be paying $61,000, just under $62,000. And so, well, Codeine's going to explain to you why she felt it was important to get a playground. What I have here is some pictures of what currently exists and then what the new playground would look like. And so
the screen's blank.
Oh. I'm not plugged in? Is that what you said? Yeah. So, okay, so
it says no signal.
This process actually started when Shirley Resich was still here. And Shirley began looking at adding a playground because the current playground didn't meet the ADA requirement. And at the time that the original playground was set up, it was licensed for 50 to 60 students. And now we have approximately 200 students. So one playground structure isn't adequate for the number of students that are currently at VILA. And so I'm going to let Codeine talk about why
why I need this.
I'll let her go on, and then
Are we
let's see
waiting
her-
for the number to go down to 0? Is that what we're waiting for? We're counting backwards. Huh? Oh.
Dr. Austin, and thank you, members of the...
Codeine, can you turn the mic on?
Yeah, let me see. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
There.
A little louder.
Thank you, Dr. Austin and members of the board for giving me this opportunity to speak to you this evening. Thank you. As you can see, this is our playground that we have currently at Belmonte. And one of the things that I'd like for you to know is that physical activity is essential for preschoolers ages 3 to 5. Research recommends that preschoolers receive between 90 and 120 minutes of gross motor activity daily. This past year, we had 220 students enrolled in the preschool morning program, and that's from the hours of 9 to 12:30. With the current structure in place, these preschoolers were only able to access the structure for 60 minutes a week. With the addition of a new play structure, this will give each classroom 30 minutes a day of outside activity. So it's really important that we look at that aspect of it. Right now, we're not coming even close to what they should be getting on a daily average. Yes, our children go outside. I want you to know that they do go out in the morning times. But it's not the climbing where we work on climbing and balance. We're working on outside activities, but it's really sedentary play where they're playing on the music wall. It's not that active play that they actually need. The active play helps in preventing childhood obesity, It really develops cognitive and physical development with children.
Do we have a real picture of the playground equipment?
The new or
The
the
new one we don't. This is
No, this
This
is
is a schematic, this is a drawing
Right.
of it.
This is what we were given, several to look at to choose from. When we got a chance to look at the actual structures, we took a lot of things into account. As Lydia mentioned earlier, our present playground is not ADA. It doesn't meet the ADA requirements. In 2011 to 2014, we had a child with cerebral palsy. She was there at our site for 3 years. She was never able to access the playground structure. The new structure has many features that will allow children with special needs that prevent them from coming onto the structure. It will give them access to the structure. So this is one of the things that we looked at when we looked at all of the designs were which structures would really allow all children to have access. And this structure did meet those qualifications.
I don't have a problem with the idea that you need new playground equipment, but it's real hard for me to look at it's not an actual photograph of the equipment. I mean, it's not good enough. And I've got a real, I don't understand the palm trees, because I look at the palm trees and they look like an attractive nuisance to me, like someone's going to climb up them and fall off of them. And so I don't get the palm trees. But
one of the reasons why we looked at the palm trees is the location of the structure is in a very sunny area, and so we were looking at something that could give us shade.
I understand that, but I guess my point is, in the past when this isn't your fault, by the way. In the past when we've looked at playground equipment, they haven't given us a drawing of it. They've actually given us a picture of the actual playground equipment, and this is like a drawing.
Well, this drawing, I do believe it went to ASCIP.
When we bought the Mira Catalina playground, it was the same type of presentation.
Well, I don't know. I don't get a feeling for what it is at all. And I understand you may need shade, and maybe there are other ways of doing it, but I just look at the palm trees and think someone's going to climb up and fall off. So that's my...
But the existing structure is located off to the side. If I'm looking at the school and standing in the parking lot with the ball fields behind me, the parking lot, the school, it's off on the far left-hand side.
It's down below, right?
It's down below. Is this going to, right, because the swing sets are down there, and occasionally we knock a volleyball down there. Is the playground going to go in the same area? I assume we're going to keep the old structure, the existing structure, because I was going to, it seems like that's in reasonably decent shape.
Exactly. The playground that we have is going to stay right where it is. The other one is going to go, if you're standing in the parking lot, it's going to go directly behind the buildings.
So it's going to go in the courtyard between the two buildings, basically?
Not the ones between the two buildings, but on the other side.
Oh, the far side of the second building.
Right.
Okay, so there's actually, that's a parking lot that kind of goes down there on an angle. It used to be a parking lot.
It used to be a parking lot, right.
Okay,
It's
so
still-
out behind the back of the second set of things, which used to be 4th and 5th grade when I went there.
Now it's all
1,000 years ago.
preschool classrooms.
Okay.
Quinn, could you talk a little about, I'm not so interested in kind of the actual design per se, but why or how you selected this one rather than something, frankly, that might have actually been larger and even more expensive?
We really wanted to make sure that we looked at everything. We looked at the large ones, we looked at the most expensive ones. What we really wanted to make sure was that it was going to be used by all the children without causing any problems for the ones who are too small. The larger structures were very large, and we have 2-year-olds, and we want them to be able to have access to the climbing structure as well. So we took that into consideration. We wanted to make sure that we were being,
Sure.
fair and in the middle. We didn't want to go too high or too big.
I'd actually just like to apologize. I mean, having a son that's been there for the last 2 years, I actually think it's sad that it's taken this long. We invested hundreds of thousands of dollars to get that site up to par in terms of bathrooms and rooms, and it's not like our other schools in many ways, right? This is actually an enterprise. This is something we're doing to not only provide a school for the community, but we actually are trying to raise money, and we are competing with some very nice preschools and early ed centers on the Hill. So I would fully support whatever you think is best.
Okay.
I would even support more, because I think in order to compete with those other sites. And I think what we have been offering in terms of this kind of psychomotor opportunity is not nearly equivalent to the amazing curriculum we offer in terms of, I mean, that school is very unique in the state of California, not just in our local neighborhood. So I'm fully supportive, and I wish we would have done it sooner.
Thank you. We get emails regularly from people moving in from out of the country, from people moving in from other states within the country, asking for information, brochures, signing up for tours. We just had a family this week moved in from Houston, setting up a tour with them. So I know that the interest is out there, and they do come to the program. What would help and what it would be a real huge selling point is having a structure, because when we do take families out on tours, there's 3 questions that they always ask.
Mm-hmm.
What's the teacher-to-student ratio? What's the daily classroom routine? And the final question is always, where is your playground, or do you have a playground or play structure? I believe that the play structure is going to be a selling point for the program. It will help those families who are on the fence trying to decide. If you look at the community preschools and our biggest competitor, you can see their playgrounds. They're very elaborate, they look good, and we need to be just as competitive in that area.
I'm looking at the schematic diagram, which actually, the first time it was upside down, but I flipped it around.
Or you could have stood on your head.
Could have, but it's been a long day. And I notice at the top right-hand corner, it is, and I can't read it, I think the letters are PEMA certified. Is that IP? Going to, Barbara's concerned about safety, and I'm also on the company's website, and this palm tree accent topper is just one of many toppers that they offer out there with durable steel construction, and you can get your palm trees in all different colors, as a matter of fact.
I have 2 nephews who the first thing they would do on that structure would be to climb the palm tree.
Well, I
They're
don't,
climbers.
unless they
But-
have suction cups on their knees, I don't think
They can get
the
up
little
there?
tykes would be able to get up there. I'm questioning Lydia. I'm assuming that that ASKIP and everybody else under the sun has approved this for this kind of environment, so
Yes.
the whole safety concerns has already been mitigated.
Right. Yes, it has.
Okay.
I do have a question on that same thing. The existing structure, the matting and so on, is not the best looking. Has ASKIP looked at that and said that's okay?
Actually, what we have is Louis having the actual playground contractors come out and take a look at the surfacing and begin to give us some quotes. We did that for Vista Grande and Mira Catalina last year. And we actually have the safety inspection from ASKIP coming up again, and we are going to ask them to focus in on the playground structures.
All right, thank you.
And could you, I was unfortunately flipping schematics around, so I didn't hear this. Where is this going to be located? I'm looking at a Google Earth aerial map of the campus.
I wanted to put it in there. I couldn't zoom it large enough, Malcolm.
So it's going to be, if you're facing,
Here.
Will it
the
go
school?
between the two
No, it's
buildings?
behind the school,
no, not between the two buildings, but directly behind.
where you see parking.
Okay, I see the parking lot, and I see grassy fenced-in areas.
Do you know where the grassy field is?
The who?
The,
Off to
right
this-
before you go to the baseball field, there's a big grassy field out there. It's going to be right in that spot. It used to be a parking lot, but it's not in use. So it's
I don't understand
vacant.
what she was saying.
Uh,
Okay, so
I'm-
I misunderstood then what you're saying also. Is it, if I was talking about in the back of the school,
It's in the back.
but when I was giving you my orientation, I was standing in the back of school, and you're telling me it's beyond two things. So let me rephrase my question. I'm standing in the front of the school, and I'm looking at the Valmonte sign, and there's the two buildings off to my right-hand side. It's beyond the second building in that parking lot area?
So if you look to the left, behind the Belmonte sign, it's going to be right behind.
It's behind the old boardroom. You know where the
So it's-
boardroom
it's-
was
it's
at
next to-
Valmonte? It's behind it, where when the district office was there, everyone would park their cars there who worked behind the
Oh, I know where.
Oh, it's where the
boardroom.
Cox truck used to park.
Yeah.
It's where it's blocked, where.
But I
there's-
see
there's-
cars parked there.
There's fencing now to that area that you can't go beyond a certain thing, and it's
Oh.
going to be within that fenced area. Okay.
Thank you. Here you go. Tell her where to put the pointer.
Go back.
Keep going
Oh,
over the
it's up
building.
there.
Over the building.
I'm
Right
going.
there.
It's going to be
Going,
right
okay.
here.
there.
Right
That's
there?
Right there? Or is
Right
it right
here.
up where those cars are parked?
No, not where the cars are
Because
parked.
that's what I first said, and you said, no, it's over by the
No,
sign.
see, here's
Right
the
over
field.
here.
It's going to go right here.
Okay, then, when I walked, actually on more than one occasion, because Shirley was lobbying hard about all of this back in the day,
Right.
a concern we had was security,
We still have that concern.
where, you know, especially when Little League season is going on, there are a lot of kids roaming around and everything, and I know if you zoom on out, there's that other play structure that a family donated way out there.
Out there.
Right up there, the Casais.
Right.
Yeah, they're not, that's not even ours, right?
No, it's
Right.
not. It's not even.
So what's going to prevent all the little tykes who are there for their,
Right now, we have the same problem with the sunrise, the playground that's
but
right
isn't
there.
that fenced in, Cody?
People climb over it,
It's a
doesn't
short
matter.
fence.
It's a short
Short
fence. And we've got people going in. We had vandalism to some of the play equipment. So it's still it's a concern.
So is there any kind of fencing or anything in this other area?
No, it's not.
They can just have at it.
And they've had at it at our current playground site too. So it is a concern. Safety is a concern.
Where are you going, Malcolm, with this?
Well, I mean, that was a kind of a sticking point when Shirley, she never presented the board, but if you ever did a site visit over there, she said, hey, let me show you something. And
There were lots of issues with the other equipment and things that go
Yeah.
on every night and on the weekends and what have
Right,
you, but
and we've had-
that shouldn't prevent the fact that this needs to happen. The question I think should be asked is there anything we can do to minimize outside activity on it, yes or no?
We've talked to Chris, who's come over and walked the site. She's given all of our teachers her cell phone number, so when they see something going on, we're to call her immediately. We've taken things in, so we're trying. We even had to call the police just this week just to have people to circulate through because kids are out of school, and there's just loitering going on.
You have kids that are on the roofs of those buildings
Yes.
almost
Yes,
every
we-
weekend.
Yes.
Because you
That
can
was
climb up
just
the
last
fence, you can
week.
climb up the fence and get on the roof. And I yell at them virtually every Sunday to get the heck off the roof.
And I ask a quick question. I've spent a lot of time here. My son went to Sunrise, and he's also probably played on there when he wasn't supposed to, but he didn't vandalize anything, I promise. But there is a fence there during the school day so that kids don't run out onto the field. And my other concern, having lived there for a long time, is that people take their dogs on that field without leashes, and I want to make sure they can't get in to where children would be, whether it's during your school day or not. Is there at least a little fence or something that's there right now?
There's just hedges. There's nothing to stop the people, but we're out and we're real alert, just making sure that
No, I know when you're
we're there.
But all it takes is, and believe me, it's happened, one idiot with a German Shepherd running crazy, and it's not a good thing. Is there a cost to putting, is it expensive to put just a basic fence there? I mean, I would love to see you be able to add that into the cost.
I can have Louis get a quote for a perimeter fence.
Just a little rectangle there.
Mm-hmm.
I can have right in here.
Yeah, right.
You just tie into the other fence if
Yeah.
you're going to do that,
Yeah.
and you tie, and
Right
you
here.
fence off the entire asphalt.
And not so much to keep kids out on the weekend, but just as a safety thing for your children and the badly behaved people.
Thank you.
I can ask Louis tomorrow to get a fencing guy out and get a
Make sure he gets a
price on
couple
it.
of gate accesses from that area to the grass, though.
Yeah, so that you can get in and out, but just so it.
I mean, it's open now. You had the fences
We can
not-
put the openings at where they currently exist, here and here. And there might be one here. Is there 3 or 2, McCall? 3? Yeah, right here, and right here.
Do we have any other questions for Codeine?
Can you invite us to see it? When it's all done, so we can come play?
Yes, absolutely.
All right, so I need a motion.
Move that the board adopt resolution number 40, 2014-15, acquisition of playground equipment for Valmonte Early Learning Academy, which authorizes the purchase of new playground equipment at Vila through the State of California multiple awards schedules in the amount of $77,334.55.
I will second that.
Any further discussion? Barbara?
No.
Malcolm?
Nope.
Tony? No, I'm asking for the vote now.
Oh, yes.
I thought you were asking, you said, is
Any
there any
further
further
discussion?
discussion?
You said no, so I moved on to the vote.
Come on, it's not even 9:45. You're
I
fading
don't normally
on
get
us?
that many no votes.
Man, you're lucky there's not drool coming out, so.
All right.
Are you
So
asking
we're
for
going
the
to
vote?
the vote.
Okay.
Barbara?
I'm going to vote no for the reason I have 2 nephews who are almost like geckos, and they can climb practically anything. And not being able to see the thing in real life with a real picture, I'm just very uncomfortable with it for that reason.
Malcolm?
I'll vote yes.
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 Yes, okay.
But I like the idea of you having new equipment. I'm just not sure this is the right one. So,
All right, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you for waiting so long.
I'm so lost. Where are we back in the M
you're
somewhere?
back at to
Are we going to move
M4.
another?
Do we have another group to talk?
Do we?
Teachers?
You guys are just going to listen, right? They want to talk to N1? All right. No, I have no cards.
No cards. N1? Are we going to?
Do any of the 3 of you want to talk on N1? Would you like us to go to N1 now? Okay.
She's not listening.
She's not listening anyway. All right. Well, let's go to M4 then. The independent study, second reading.
Okay, that would be my item. So just very quickly, we had the first reading on May 21st. We had a board study session. And just to go through some of the details that we added, and before I do so, I want to thank Jody Pastel, who is here this evening and was moving forward with our leadership on this area since 2013-14. So the areas that we added changes to after our first reading was we went from 7 hours to 10 hours. We took the cap of 35, not specified. Historically, we haven't had 35, but if there are many students coming requesting, we'd have to revisit if negotiations or budget items, but we removed that from the AR. We also put a checkoff sheet as part of the packet for the parent and the agency. We also increased the requirement for the agency to sign a hold harmless working with Lydia and ASCIP, and also proof of insurance, which has been identical to what they have done before. And also in the AR, we included the physical education content standards. And then we also added that the teachers must maintain a weekly contact, even if it's via electronics, into the AR. So those were the changes that the board had requested, and we made those to the documents.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I have one. Under F, where it says the content areas, I just want to specify, those are not the middle school content areas, those are the high school ones, and I know this because I've unfortunately studied them. So just to either take that out or to specify that those are high school ones, that the middle school ones look a little bit different.
Correct, I could either...
So either add those in or just, I don't know, but it's going to confuse parents who are already probably confused.
So would the recommendation be to just and make sure we identify that they're high school content
Just
standards?
put that as
Put
the,
high school at the,
and either add the middle school ones in or just put the link to where they're found online, which is
The
like
link, okay.
CDE something.
yeah.
Okay, that's a good suggestion.
Then they can click on that and do that. That was my only thing.
Okay, and I'm still at the same place where I was the last time, that I think the determining whether it's they're elite athletes and the definitions of, you know, I can't even remember, I'm so tired now. But anyway, having to do with the competitions is so vague that, you know, practically anything would qualify, so not happy with that.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions?
I had a question, concern about where's the, I had it here and then I scooted somewhere else. Where's the August 15th date mentioned?
Right, that August 15th date is a Saturday this year, and if you notice on that one form,
Is that on the form? It's not in the BP or AR?
it's in the AR. We had August 15th in the AR, but we noticed on this form, the checklist, we noticed that it was August 15th.
Yep.
Probably have to look at that and change it like to the 17th, so that's not confusing. So
Okay.
we've had turn it in for a Monday.
Okay. Concern is communicating that to, like, you know, we get students transfer into this district in middle school who may not be in the loop. How are we going to get that word? I want to avoid the circumstances that they show up for registration, and I don't know where that date comes with, I would imagine our registration when school's going to start is going to be after that date.
The plan is that after the 7th and 8th graders had a check mark box that they were interested in ISPE, the high schools both feel like they have a handle on who is interested.
Okay.
And they'll send that out.
All right.
So that they, in talking with Mrs. Kress and Dr. Park, they feel like they have a handle. They will do it, they will send it either by a link, put it up on our website, and we'll
Okay.
advertise it. The same thing will happen with our 7th and 8th graders that check the box. 6th grade, we will send out an email to all of our 6th grade at all 3 middle schools to let them know of the policy, because we feel like that they did not have an opportunity as the 7th
Okay,
grade.
and so it'll be the entire population of
Sixth
sixth grade?
correct.
Okay.
Well, as soon as we were waiting for board approval.
Okay, so like this month.
Correct.
And what was the significance of the 15th again?
In working with the administrators and with the leadership, they felt that that was plenty of time to, the problem that the administrators were saying is when it was the end of the year, then we had that same problem. You know, people would go the whole summer. They felt that it was waiting until closer to when school started. That was significant date of that mid-August.
But this gives them also enough time to make adjustments on.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, so we do have a couple suggested changes that we'll have to, I mean, you wanted to get this policy out to communicate to everybody, so I don't think you want to wait to have another reading, but you'll have to make an,
Well, we could do it.
you'll have to make a motion with the
Motion
changes.
and amend.
So let me try this. I'll move approval of revisions to Administrative Regulation 6158. independent study and approve the independent study physical education documents, including the recommended changes provided tonight.
May I add, it's a suggestion of, under criteria letter F was where Linda had concerns. We could make a change to that.
I think my motion includes both of those.
Well, but we want to make sure that we're
specific?
specific. You have motion, you had F, and Malcolm, you were in,
The day, I was just wherever August 15th appears, that it's actually a real date,
Yes.
not a Saturday.
Okay.
so that's in the forms.
So is there a motion?
Tony made a motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. I have a comment. And that has to do that there's still going to be this panel, so we have consistency. Are we, the model of determining who qualifies for this? When we had that meeting, there was a talk of a panel. Was it the three principals and someone from your office?
The first looking, because of the time factor now,
Yeah.
the three administrators I've spoken with, Kelly coming on knew that we will take the applications, bring them into the Ed Service office and sit with Jody to look at, so we can have some consistency in how we're selecting the students at the three middle schools. The high schools, once again, feel like that they have a handle
Okay.
on it.
All right.
Any other questions? Okay, we have a motion, a second. Barbara?
I'm going to vote no,
Malcolm?
Yes.
but let me explain why. I'm
Okay,
going to
go
vote
ahead.
no because you've made a lot of good changes, because it was a mess. You've made a lot of good changes to make it less of a mess. The problem is it's unduly vague, where it says students are performing at a competitive level as documented by rankings and certificates of competitions, which could be any old competition. It could be a local, the purpose of the policy was really to be for elite athletes. That's where we started years ago. And anyway, it's so vague that it's kind of like Swiss cheese. So, and it's for that reason I'm going to vote against it. I really think it needs to come back to a policy meeting, and we need to have some more specificity in the policy.
Tony?
Yes.
Linda? And I vote yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you for all the, Jody, thank you for all the time you put into this. Me too, Dr. Color has. All right, N1.
All right. It is the time in the contract negotiation cycles for successor negotiations with our certificated bargaining unit, the Palos Verdes Faculty Association, and they sunshined their initial proposals with the board at our last meeting, and we are now introducing for adoption the district's intended proposals to help get us started with our bargaining. So you'll find that the proposals are attached and are supportive of the 8 district goals and intended to further the district's work towards achieving those.
Thank you. Any questions for John? All right, and we do need a motion for this as well.
I'll move approval.
Second?
Discussion? I would just make a comment. We named enough things that on our list that hopefully this will give us a chance to fix all the language that is over the last 20 years has become almost unintelligible in some respects, or has some secret meaning to somebody 15 years ago that means nothing to anybody anymore. So I hope this we take this opportunity to really thoroughly get this thing cleaned up, and then I also hope we come to a very successful negotiation in a prompt manner. So in that, Barbara, now we're voting.
Oh, we're voting?
We're voting.
Oh, aye.
Malcolm?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Yes.
Larry, yes. Okay. Thank you. to N2.
Two. Thank you. Likewise, we are also at a point where we are entering into successor negotiations with our classified bargaining unit, the California School Employees Association, Chapter 123. Okay. And you'll see great similarity in the format of the bargaining proposals. However, different specific proposals, but yet again focused around the 8 adopted goals of the district. And with the adoption of the district's intended proposals, we can begin the bargaining process with our classified bargaining partner.
All right. Any questions for John? All right. A motion, please.
Move approval of the initial proposal from the Palos Verdes Peninsula Unified School District for negotiations on a successor contract agreement with the Palos Verdes Chapter 123 of the California School Employees Association.
I'll second.
Discussion? Barbara, we're voting?
Oh, yes.
Malcolm?
Yes.
Tony?
Yes.
Linda? Yes. Larry says yes. Thank you. All right. N3 is a information item only. By the way, same comments to the CSEA. 03 is a...
Oh, we have some more.
I actually want to make a comment because it came up in on one of the speakers on the non-agendized item about the $1.50 for computers and so on. I'm not going to go to the comments, the substance of the comments about not spending money on computers. What I'm going to highlight is one of the issues with spending monies on computers, particularly when we're given computers or we have older computers. At some point, you can't maintain them anymore. We spend more money on staff time trying to get them to run and be supportive than they're worth. And the cycle of obsolescence for a computer is getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And I know our technology community is very attuned to trying to make sure that we're making purchases that maximize the cycle, the life cycle of the items we're getting, so we're not ending up with 50 Dells from ODARC 100 that we have to recycle out for $1.50 or $1.80 a unit. Did I miss anything?
No, you're absolutely right. The most of these items, I think we do a really good job of getting the maximum value out of our technology as possible. We have the, unfortunately, it's kind of we use things until they almost don't work anymore, or until they can no longer be supported with the end-of-life operating systems or software that supports those. So kudos to the staff throughout the district that has really tried to get the best value out of the technology that's available to them. And just a note on the dollar value is we recycle everything through a certified recycling company that will demanufacture it so that this plastics, metals, toxic materials do not end up in any landfills. So they do an extremely good job of going through, and the value is based on weight of the materials. And now there's some materials that have no value because they no longer will consider that. So just a side note.
Do we actually pay, I mean, the values of $1.80, we actually get a check for $1.80, or are we paying for that service?
We get a check. What they do is that after they go through all the equipment that we send to them, we'll get a check sometimes for a few $100s, sometimes it'll be $1,200. There is a fee that they've now changed over to actually picking up the equipment. They used to do it for free, but now there's a fee they charge us, a nominal fee. And for the hard drives, we pay, I think, $1.50 per to have them shredded. So there's no data, any confidence that we pull the hard drives out. And I've actually been to their factory to see how they shred them and destroy the data.
So I sledgehammered.
That works too.
That work too?
Yeah,
I literally did
sledgehammer,
that the other
drill.
day. Okay. Good to know.
I have a special nail at home, a special hammer, formatting the hard disk.
All right, item O, budget.
Okay, I think this should be pretty quick. There are absolutely no changes to the actual budget document compared to what you saw at the first June meeting where we had the public hearing. So, yes,
Yes. 01.
yes.
So
What
does
did you want
anybody
to talk
have
on
a-
that? Sorry.
We're on
I'm
01
being-
LCAP.
I'm being a hog.
No, you've got it.
Okay. And so the process is that we need to first adopt the LCAP, and then following that, the budget in that order. So
There's no changes from what we saw last meeting?
No, there are not. And
No.
I also want to thank Becky Cash for staying here this evening, too, who was very instrumental in maintaining. So thank you, Becky.
So there's not a slideshow?
I could pull up my old one on my computer if you're disappointed, Mr. President.
Darn it. All right, so we need a motion then.
See, when it gets late.
We all get
what
He
we
gets
get.
punchy.
This is just,
Or one, is to adopt the LCAP.
This is why you should never make major decisions after about 10 o'clock.
I move that the board adopt the
We got 2 minutes.
3 minutes to
2015-16
go.
local control and accountability plan.
I'll second.
Discussion? All those in favor at this point?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. We're not spending money on it. I mean, this is not a spending money thing. All right, now we have 02 budget. We'll do a roll call on that one.
I move that the board approve the 2015-16 proposed adopted budget as presented.
Second.
Any questions, comments?
Yes. I had a question today. Superintendent tried to help me. Okay, so the governor signed yesterday. So the clock is ticking. Those 45 days include weekends.
Yes, they do to me. Kathy, 45 days includes all days.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. So
What, you figured out what 45 days is now?
there is a website for everything, my dear. So you put in the date and you put in, give me 45 days, and it's like it's a Sunday. It's like August
I know that website.
something. And so,
We'll have to have a board meeting.
We're good. We're going to do it at the August 12th. I think that's the date, board meeting. And it will actually be available to the public once it posts the Friday before.
so we'll be compliant,
Yes.
right?
I don't know how, if
Yeah.
you're 45 days and you're counting weekends, and August 12th is 43 days from July 1st. So how would you be 45?
It'll post the Friday before.
So that's when it counts from?
So
It says be available for the public.
Okay.
review.
All right, good.
So we feel good about it.
Yeah.
Glad you
It's
do.
been, and I was feeling like a dummy, you know.
And the other
I've been doing this 10 years, but how many times have we,
Well, what the county does is the county says if the dollar amount's not significant, just go ahead and include it in your first interim. But for us, it's about $1 million, and we feel that's significant. So we're going to go ahead and do the revision for the August 12th
Okay.
board meeting.
Because we didn't have revisions last year after the budget was adopted because the amount was not significant.
but this will be,
Would be, yes.
yeah.
And it won't be a full document. It'll be our typical budget revisions. It'll be revising the revenues.
Okay. Okay.
Any other questions or comments? All right, did we have a motion?
Yes, we do.
And we had a second. Roll call, Barbara?
Yes.
Malcolm?
Yes?
Tony?
Yes.
Linda? Larry, yes. All right, thank you. Kathy, you were great.
Thank you.
All right, so GASB 54. Resolution 37.
It's just the resolution that gets adopted every year that basically explains how we designate our ending fund balances on our funds and the 4 or 5 different categories that there are.
Yeah, several years ago, there was a new governmental standards board statement out there that said that you can no longer just lump all your ending fund balance into one pot. You need to designate it, and you need to identify the categories that you'll designate it in. And so that's what this resolution is doing.
Guessing that was GASB 54.
It was.
Correct.
Does anybody have any questions about that?
I move that the board approve resolution number 37-2014-15 to establish fund balance priorities as required by GASB 54.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All We go to 04, cash borrowing.
This is another routine resolution that we do each year. We've never had to use it. I don't think we will now or ever. And this allows the county office to transfer cash on a temporary basis if during the closing process they find that one of the funds is short on cash. They'll transfer cash from one fund into the other. So this allows that to happen, but we've never done it, and there's no reason we should. But it's routine.
Any
It's
questions?
like having overdraft protection
Yes.
at your bank, exactly. Except it's a bigger bank and bigger amounts of money.
A bigger draft.
Any questions?
No.
All right, a motion, please.
I move approval.
I'll second.
Discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. Consent calendar. Linda, do you have anything you'd like to remove from the consent calendar?
Sorry, I
Okay,
have one.
that's
I'm
all
going
right.
to do Q5D.
Q5D is Linda. Anthony? Malcolm?
None.
Barbara?
None.
Okay, can someone make a motion for approval of Q1A, Q2A through F, Q3A through D, Q4A through I, Q5A through C, and Q5E?
So moved.
Larry,
I'll second.
we need to pull Q5A because there's an addendum to Houghton Mifflin.
All right, so
Sorry, I circled that and I didn't.
minus Q5A.
It's okay.
So moved.
I'll
Malcolm,
second.
second. All those in favor? Aye. All right. Q5A is just being pulled from the agenda altogether, right?
No, just, there's an addendum to that. There's a, the
Well, that was
explanation.
what you came out with.
Yeah, on the
Yeah.
email.
Yeah, so do you, I have a hard copy.
I got
Okay.
electronic.
Everyone got a,
Got it.
okay.
Okay, so that was just the explanation for it, so you had that.
All right, any questions? All right, will someone make a motion to approve Q5A?
So moved?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Q5D.
Okay, I pulled this just so that Trent could answer Joan Davidson's question about subcontractors and this Bradford item. So I thought, she asked the
Sure.
question, so I thought I would let you
Perfect.
answer it to reassure us all.
Basically, what this is for is we have what we call a network appliances, which is a device that sits on our network. It's like a computer that allows us to manage all of the Wi-Fi accounts for staff, for guests. What that device and that system, what this agreement is for, is that it provides all the updates, maintenance, support for that product, that solution. We took the agreement to ASCIP to review for, as part of our process. There is no student privacy concerns with this, so it's more or less a support agreement for that. So any concerns about student privacy are really not applicable to this.
So I need to move to approve Q5D.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
All right. I think that means we're at the end, doesn't it?
Yep.
Please. Oh, darn it. Well, you know what? At 9:59, the meeting is adjourned.